5 Live Formula One.
Hello and welcome to race day. We are ready for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Not long to go now. The tension is rising on the grid. The temperatures are rising too. It is currently 28 degrees, blue skies over the Hungaroring, and it's Lewis Hamilton on pole position, beating Max Verstappen in qualifying yesterday by a sliver. 3,000 separating the two champions. They'll line up on the front row of the grid and lead them away very shortly. Of course, lights going out at 2 o'clock. I'm joined this weekend up in the commentary box by Chris Hartley, our lead commentator, and former Williams F1 driver Jack Aitken, as well as the BBC's chief F1 writer Andrew Benson. And I think we've got a bit of a mixed up grid. Of course, we've got a pole sitter in Lewis Hamilton. Starting from the front, Jack Aitken. Can we expect something different this afternoon, or is Max Verstappen still the one that we've got the eyes on for the top step of the podium this afternoon?
This is by far our best chance of something like that in a long time, with the season being so dominated by the Red Bull and Verstappen combination. But through practice, we saw that the Mercedes of Hamilton was looking quite strong. We heard that Verstappen was struggling a little bit to find the right balance with his car. And we weren't quite sure if we could let ourselves hope that this would actually be the case, but Hamilton went and did a brilliant lap in qualifying, and there are some question marks over Verstappen's happiness with that Red Bull. They have slightly modified the Pirelli in the last couple of races. Maybe that's not quite suiting the Red Bull at the moment. They're still working it out. If Hamilton can get a good launch, which he usually does, he's a strong starter, and keep the lead into turn one, it's very difficult to pass here.
Yeah, Jack is right. Max hasn't felt comfortable in the car all weekend long, Chris. But when it comes to the race, things settle down a little bit. Those little foibles that were pestering him perhaps yesterday in qualifying, he's not going to be on the ragged edge during this race. So maybe they're not going to feel quite as extreme as they did yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, and in practice had some long run performances which were very strong. And Christian Horner, the team principal, has said, look, Max was fighting the car a little bit yesterday. You could see it in qualifying. It wasn't quite there. There were some issues with the front and the rear balance that kept changing it around. But he was still only 0.003 of a second away from getting his 6th consecutive pole position. So they're not exactly a million miles away. And you can bet your bottom dollar he's still going to be in there in the fight. But the start and the pit stop strategies are going to be the two key crucial areas of this race coming up.
And of course, the drivers that can really use the pit stop strategy to their advantage are the McLarens. Andrew, we have Lando Norris in P3, his teammate Oscar Piastri P4. Surely they're in the pound seats this afternoon, whilst the headlines are maybe a bit more about Lewis and Max. Got to keep an eye on those McLarens.
Yes, and they've got the benefit of having two cars against one each from Mercedes and Red Bull, sorry. The question fundamentally is about pace, isn't it? I mean, I think everyone fears Verstappen's race pace. Hamilton was saying this morning he thought Verstappen was half a second quicker than them on the race simulations earlier in practice. If Verstappen gets some clear out to run at that pace, then it could be curtains for everybody else. The question is, can other people get ahead of him? And can they keep him behind after that? Goodness me, the grandstands are absolutely packed around the Hungaroring. A large amount of the fans dressed in orange. They want Max to win. The Dutch fans that follow him around the world. But there are a few Lewis Hamilton fans there too as well. There was a roar when he got pole position yesterday afternoon, wasn't there, Jack?
It was a popular one, that's for sure. It's been so long that I think people, or Lewis himself, he was quite emotional. He'd almost forgotten what it was like, he was saying, to be on pole position. So, yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah, indeed, a huge roar, and he had to wait, 32 Grand Prix without getting a pole position. 104th pole position. He loves this track. He's had more wins, more poles than anybody else around this circuit.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are minutes away from lights out in Hungary. The Hungaroring is toasty hot this afternoon. 28 degrees and the track temperature 46 degrees. So it's going to be a hot afternoon. Lewis Hamilton on pole position. He beat Max Verstappen to the top step yesterday by 0.003 of a second. They'll line up on the front row together. Of course, those two have just a little bit of previous. And we always say that Max Verstappen perhaps drives a little differently when he's up against Lewis Hamilton. One to watch, though, is Lando Norris, P3 in the McLaren. Can he get amongst it off the start? And is it all about the start? Well, for a quick chat about what we can expect this afternoon, I'm joined by former Williams F1 driver Jack Aitken, our lead commentator Chris Hartley, and the BBC's chief F1 writer Andrew Benson. Jack, this has got all the makings of a pretty tasty start. Is that where this race finishes, essentially, or have we got more to look forward to this afternoon?
Certainly not where the race finishes, but it's going to be a massive part of this Grand Prix. This track is notoriously difficult to overtake on. It's very, very twisty, very little straight line. And even though we do have the DRS helping for the main two overtaking spots, which are turn 1 and turn 2, it's very tricky to follow through that final sector to get a run on your opponent. So if Lewis can keep the lead, he greatly increases his chances of winning, and it's going to come down to the pit stop strategy after that.
I think we're all excited to see what Lewis Hamilton can do. Of course, it's been a while, as Jack says, since he's been on pole position. He hasn't forgotten it, has he? He got his 104th pole position yesterday. He's looking to take his 104th victory. My goodness me, though, the Mercedes team have had to work for this, and those 3,000ths represent the work of 18, 19 months for the team, because they've been so on the back foot. Is this a turn of form? Are we going to see more pole positions from Lewis and George?
Maybe so. It's starting to come. I mean, Lewis has had 3 podiums out of the last 4 Grand Prix now. He said, look, the car, I didn't have the confidence with it at the start of the season. I didn't feel confident enough to really attack on the brakes. I didn't know it wasn't going to throw me off the road. Now I'm starting to get more comfortable with it. We've made some tweaks. They brought in quite a lot of changes at Monaco, which has started to feed through now. And he said there was nothing left out there on that pole lap. That was as quick as he could go. And you've still got then the 2 drivers around him, Verstappen and Norris, first and third, who reckon they have got a bit more left in the tank. So it's going to be a challenge for sure.
I mean, this is one of the closest qualifying sessions that we've seen in a long, long time. The field was very tightly packed, and you could hear the difference between the driver who was on pole, Hamilton, who's happy with the car, feeling comfortable with the balance, he loves this track, versus Verstappen and Norris, who came out feeling a bit so-so. They felt like they'd maybe left a bit on the table, that the car wasn't fully there. You need full confidence around here.
Andrew Benson, I know you like to look at how the cars are going to behave in the race. We call it obviously the race pace. Lewis Hamilton saying that the Red Bull has half a second over them in long run pace. Does it look that way this afternoon? Do you really think the Red Bull is the stronger race car this afternoon?
Well, it's been the stronger race car all season, Rosanna, hasn't it? The actual Formula 1's data doesn't say the same as Hamilton. It says it's only a tenth that the Red Bull's got on both the Mercedes and the McLaren. But the thing is, we don't actually know, because it's hotter now than it has been all weekend. Track temperatures, they've just dipped below 50 degrees Celsius, but it's still 49.6. That's going to give the tyres a really hard workout. But again, it still favours Red Bull because they've had such good tyre life all year.
Yeah, tyre management, definitely a topic of the afternoon to come, Jack. They also don't know that much about the tyres, so we've had a little bit of limited running. We had rain on Friday. We've had an alternative tyre allocation this weekend for the teams and drivers to wrap their heads around. It's going to be tricky to know how these tyres are going to perform, especially in these very hot conditions.
Yeah, what's held the teams back a bit this weekend is the alternative tyre allocation, where they don't have quite as many sets of tyres, and we had a rain hit first practice, so they're actually quite short on data. They did get some long running in, but not as much as they normally would have liked to. So, you know, we have seen in Grand Prix in the past years here that the expectation for degradation didn't always match up with reality, and people had to adapt during the race.
Well, the celebs, the VIPs have made their way off the grid. The mechanics are just taking the tyre blankets off the cars now. The drivers are in their places, and we're getting ready for the formation lap. So I'm going to hand it over to you guys in the commentary box. Chris, it's all yours. We're ready for the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Thanks very much, Rosanna. Yeah, so we're all set to go. Max Verstappen, then the championship leader, 99 points clear of his teammate Sergio Perez. And then third in the championship, Fernando Alonso, but the form has been a little bit off kilter of late for the Aston Martins. Lewis Hamilton, who starts on pole position, fourth in the championship, 121.16 points adrift of Fernando Alonso. And then it's Carlos Sainz Jr. and George Russell, who's near the back of the grid for this one, fifth and sixth in the championship. It is a hot day, 28 degrees. It is 48 degrees track temperature, and the scene is set for the Hungarian Grand Prix. So this is how they line up for the race. Lewis Hamilton on pole position for the first time since the end of 2021, but only 3,000ths quicker than Max Verstappen, who starts second on the grid. Lando Norris, only 85,000ths of a second adrift, starts third, with his teammate Oscar Piastri fourth. Zhou Guanyu is fifth on the grid. Charles Leclerc is sixth. Valtteri Bottas starts seventh. Fernando Alonso in 8th, and then to complete the top 10, Sergio Perez, another disappointing qualifying in 9th. Nico Hülkenberg is 10th. 11th on the grid is Carlos Sainz. 12th is Esteban Ocon, and then 13th on his return to Formula One, Daniel Ricciardo. 14th, Lance Stroll. 15th, Pierre Gasly. 16th, Alex Albon, and then 17th on the grid, Yuki Tsunoda. 18th, George Russell with work to do. Kevin Magnussen starts 19th, and Logan Sargent starting at the back in 20th position. We'll be back at Hoylake with Mark for the Open shortly, but we'll get the first lap of this race in. We're on the formation lap. The scene is set for an absolute crackerjack of a race here, with a very mixed up grid and just half a second covering the top 10 in qualifying. This should be something to behold.
Definitely. We've got all the ingredients for a cracker this afternoon. The Hungaroring is packed out. The grandstands are full. And Lewis Hamilton earlier on said that he thinks Max Verstappen's just going to breeze past and disappear. But he also said if he can pull a rabbit out of the hat, then who knows what's possible. He's got 70 laps to try and take the victory this afternoon. He's done it before. Can he do it again?
Right, we're about to find out what must be going through their minds and what is going to be the approach here from the drivers. Lewis Hamilton, less to lose. He wants to get a race victory, his first of the season here if he can. Max Verstappen has the championship lead, but he has a big championship lead. Will he take a risk? Will he want to go toe-to-toe in that first corner with Lewis Hamilton? And what about the driver just behind with that first McLaren, Lando Norris? He got a great start 2 weeks ago at Silverstone to get straight into the lead of the race. If he can huck it up here, that'll be very interesting indeed. The cars just making their way onto the grid, back in the team garages. The team principals looking focused. They've done all they can for the time being. This next bit is up to the drivers. It is nearly half a kilometre the run from the start line to the first corner, so it's not the longest straight in the world, this, but the run actually to turn 1 is over 450 metres, so the start is going to be critical here. And Lewis Hamilton had a terrific start here last year to go straight from 7th to 5th. He's had good starts lately. He needs a good start here to keep not 1 but 2 possibly cars behind him. And then don't factor Oscar Piastri out of this either. He's 4th on the grid. He was a little bit away from his teammate, but he was a little bit disappointed with his own performance as well. He could be a factor here. The green flag is waved at the back of the grid. The red lights come on, and we're about to go racing here for 70 laps of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Off we go, and it looks like a decent start for Lewis Hamilton. He's on the outside though as they go up through the gears. Verstappen is coming up the inside. Right behind the pair of them is the McLaren of Lando Norris. It's almost 3 abreast, and down the inside goes Verstappen. He's got the lead of the race here. Hamilton out wide, and Oscar Piastri with a terrific start. He's going to go to 2nd place here. So he goes in on the battle here and goes up to 2nd as they go into turn 2. It's side by side between Lando Norris, who's on the outside through turn 2, and Lewis Hamilton, and he goes through as well on the exit to the corner. So down, I'm afraid, to 4th place for Lewis Hamilton. Verstappen leads, Piastri in 2nd, and then Lando Norris in 3rd place. And already, Jack, a bit of a gap forming between the top 2 and the next 2.
Yeah, it was a hectic first couple of corners there between the top 4. Hamilton and Verstappen were really pushing each other hard into that first corner and almost opened the door wide open for Piastri as Norris got caught on the outside of those two, squabbling as well. So they're still fairly close. Going through the middle sector now, things are lining out as you can't really run line astern there, and heading towards the first overtaking opportunity for the next lap.
Yeah, decent start from the Ferraris as well. Carlos Sainz is right behind Charles Leclerc, so they are in 5th and 6th positions. Perez trying to come up from 9th on the grid. He got into Q3 for the first time in 6 Grand Prix, but still way off the pace of his teammate. Right, so they're coming into the final couple of corners of the first lap of the race into turn 14, and at the end of the first lap of the race, it's going to be Max Verstappen, the leader, by about 7/10 of a second from Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, and in 4th place, Lewis Hamilton.
Well, there you go, Lewis Hamilton losing the start, losing the lead off the start of the Hungarian Grand Prix, and it's Max Verstappen leading the way. We'll head back to Hoylake, but there'll be full commentary on the BBC Sport website, chappers.
So what a first lap that was from Oscar Piastri. What a run into the first corner. What we expected at all, really. There's battles going on further behind as well. The Alphas had a great qualifying in 5th and 7th. Best ever qualifying for Zhou Guanyu, but he's not had the greatest of starts as he's dropped down to 16th place, and Bottas has dropped from 7th down to 12th place, Jack. Yeah,
it looked like Zhou just had a terrible start, and the other two that really suffered were the two Alpines. They came together in the first corner, actually.
And we've got Pierre Gasly already into the pits, and they're looking at damage at the back of the car. So the right rear tyre is off. and the wing looks a little bit wobbly and damaged as well. So Pierre Gasly had a tremendous run of 21 Grand Prix finishing races until a puncture and contact at Silverstone with the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll put him out. Well, that's the second consecutive retirement, because it doesn't look like he's going back out, I'm afraid. So we've lost one already. We talked about the good start from Oscar Piastri, but a great start as well from 11th on the grid from Carlos Sainz. He only missed out on getting through to Q3 by a couple of thousandths of a second. He's had a mega start here. Now, he's opted to start on the soft tyre. He's the only runner in the top 9 on the soft tyre. The other one on the soft in the top 10 is in 10th place, and that's Lance Stroll. We're expecting two-stop strategy, but maybe something slightly different here with the strategies for those looking to come through, Jack, given we've got a slightly softer compound tyres than we had here 12 months ago.
Yeah, the next laps will be quite telling, because Sainz is all over his teammate Leclerc with that compound advantage, with the softs firing up a lot easier than the mediums. Perez is not far behind them in 8th place on the hard, and we're just going to start to see that all shake out with, you know, you'd expect the soft to start overheating pretty soon, especially with how close he's tucked up in the dirty air of the sister Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, all the predictions were that it's going to be a two-stop strategy.
I think this is going to be terminal, please.
Oh, what a nightmare. That was the team radio for Esteban Ocon, because he has joined his teammate, Pierre Gasly, in the pits. Both Alpines out of the race already.
We'll have to wait and see what happened with that Alpine clash, but that's the second race this year that they've taken each other out. In Australia, they crashed out. Here's the start now. Let's talk us through it, Jack.
Yeah, let's have a look. So we see the Alpha, the first Alpha of Zhao doesn't even move at all. He gets a very slow start. Here's Hamilton's radio.
Sorry about that, guys. Don't sweat it, Lewis. It's going to be a long, hot race.
And we're looking now for the Alpines. So on either side of the track, Ocon, it looks like, comes back to the middle. Gasly has a lot of speed, but it's actually the AlphaTauri that goes into the back of Ocon, pushes him effectively into Gasly, and they both get serious damage from that.
Yeah, getting a replay of the start from Joe's point of view. His previous best was 9th on the grid. He was 5th on the grid. But he had an utter disaster of a start, really bogged down off the line, and then they swarmed him left and right. And then I would say, he tagged the back of the AlphaTauri. It was actually two separate incidents, almost at the same piece of tarmac, that wasn't it, as the Alpines then came together. And we're looking now at the start from the perspective of Daniel Ricciardo on his return. So he was right on the tail of Esteban Ocon. He managed to get past the slow starting Alpha of Zhou Guan Yu, and they was right behind. And then around the outside comes Pierre Gasly, and yeah, it was the AlphaTauri of Daniel Ricciardo just clipped the back, didn't he?
Well, it was a chain reaction, like you say, wasn't it? Because it was the Daniel got a hit from behind that pushed him into the car in front. You had 3 cars nose to tail going into turn 1 there, and the Alpines of Gasly and Ocon were the unfortunate sort of recipients of all of the damage at the end of that. So we just see another replay from the Alpines perspective. And they just interlocked wheels with Ocon actually riding over the top of the front of Gasly's nose there. So yeah, quite serious damage, and it's a real shame for the Alpine team. Both cars out on the first lap, basically.
I mean, Gasly had a great start. He threw it around the outside, so he's on the outside of turn 1. There's 4 cars on the inside of him, and you're always at huge risk when you try the outside move. I mean, everybody goes for the inside, of course, and there's a queue there, and it can pay off, but you are always going to be the one that gets cannoned off if you're on the outside. And then loss of the tyre then as the car got going again, but not for long, only until he got to the pit lane. So DRS is now enabled after the first 2 laps of the race. The DRS zone, there are 2 of them. One is on the start, finish straight, and the other is unusually early on in the lap as well. That's between turns 1 and 2, that downhill right-hand run down between the first corner, the right-hand kink, and down towards the left-hander at turn 2. And that's because, Jack, really, they're the only straight bits of track on the whole lap, aren't they?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the rest of the circuit, especially through the middle part of the lap, there's almost no opportunity to get a proper slipstream off the car in front of you. If you're going to overtake there, you have to have a massive pace advantage. But we're watching Perez now. He's on the back of Alonso. Even with the hard compound, it looks like he's got that working quite well. And they did look like they worked well in qualifying Q1 yesterday, where the teams, of course, were forced to use that tyre. He's really trying to stay within about half a second of the Aston Martin and doing a pretty good job through sector 2. Now they're getting into the final sector. It's all about just trying to keep the tyres cool for a really good launch off the last corner to get the DRS and that slipstream into turn 1.
Well, his teammate, Max Verstappen, the race leader, last time around set the fastest lap of the race so far. He's 1.7 seconds clear of Oscar Piastri, who in turn is 1.3 seconds clear of his teammate Lando Norris, who is there in third place. Fourth is still Hamilton, Leclerc in fifth, Sainz in sixth, Alonso is seventh, Perez is in eighth place. Alonso going toe-to-toe to defend his position here from Perez, who tried to come around the outside of him there in that battle for seventh, but Alonso made that a very wide Aston Martin. He's going to have to make it super wide for the rest of the first sector as well, because Perez is all over him. He tries the outside, he tries to cut back then on the inside, but Alonso, always the wise veteran, has his eyes in the mirrors and manages to keep Perez behind him, crucially at the start of the lap.
That was really, really nice car placement from Alonso. He knows he has the inferior car here, but just putting his car on the inside and then maximising his speed on the entry to run Perez out of room as they get towards the exit, not overdoing it to overshoot and let him get a cut back, and Perez really can't do anything else. Those are his only two opportunities on this lap.
And getting flashbacks to Fernando Alonso holding up Lewis Hamilton in 2021 round here to help his then teammate Esteban Ocon hang on to that race win. If he can hold on for the next, 64 laps, then he'll be doing a good job to keep Perez behind.
Yeah, podium looks unlikely given the start he's had, given the performance so far this weekend for Fernando Alonso, but his last podium here was in a Ferrari 9 years ago in 2014. His first ever win in Formula One was at this track exactly 20 years ago. Just how much experience he's got. His 20th season in the championship. Now Perez comes out of the final corner. Is he within DRS zone? Still just, but he's a little bit further back than he'd ideally like to be, so it's going to be tough to pass on the way into turn one. I think he's going to show his nose, but he's still a couple of car lengths back, and maybe he's going to have a lunge down into turn two. Alonso goes a bit wide on the exit to turn one, goes down the hill, but he's still got a length advantage. And again, Jack, it looks like he's covered it off just perfectly, because the Aston had really good traction coming out of that right-hander at turn 14.
Now, a popular tactic here, I say popular, but it's really just the shrewder drivers that will do this, and Alonso certainly is one of those. Effectively, you just save your tyres through the first half of the lap, where you know that the car behind you can't really get close, can't overtake, and save a bit of temperature, keep them under control while your opponent is scrabbling behind you, sliding the car, trying to get as close as he can, and then just punch it for the last two corners, get a gap, get a really nice exit, and there's nothing that they can do, and Alonso's done this before.
I guess the difference of the tyre compounds here, we've got Sergio Perez on the hard tyre and Fernando Alonso on the medium. Perez needs to push Alonso to use up those mediums, because Perez needs to go as long as he possibly can into this race.
He does, but Perez will also be thinking this is time that he's losing lap time, and he wants to get up for that podium fight, and he can't sit back and wait for Alonso to box or let him by. He needs to get past by force, really, and Alonso knows that, and he's happy to sit there, save his tyres. He knows he's not really in the fight for the podium. He's just going to try and maximise his race.
So the most widely predicted version of pit stop strategy, I'll come back to this in a moment, because Perez has certainly got very close and dives down the inside on the way to turn one of Fernando Alonso. Takes the Red Bull a bit deep into the corner, but he's covered it off on the exit to turn one, and Perez gets through after a couple of laps of trying into seventh place ahead of Alonso. So yeah, the most favoured or most likely option was two-stop strategy, start on the mediums and then switch to the hards and either go mediums again at the end or go hards again at the end. But we have had Perez start on the hard tyre. We've had a few starts on the soft tyre as well. As mentioned, we get a replay of the move now, Jack, and this was still good move on the brakes, even though he had DRS, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was just far enough back that he almost lulled Alonso into a false sense of security. He didn't move over to defend, and then Checo moved out just before he hit the brakes, showed his nose, and then sort of cemented the move by being nice and deep into the corner and managed to get a decent exit as well. Of course, you get a second hit of DRS when you come out of turn one, so he was able to stretch his advantage over Alonso going to turn two. Yeah,
Alonso saw it coming, knew he couldn't really do anything about it, and then tried to go wide into the corner and try and cut back on the exit, but that didn't quite work out. So we have 8 laps complete. Max Verstappen leading by 2.6 seconds now. Oscar Piastri in second place. 1.8 seconds behind him is Lando Norris, but Lando has just set the absolute best second sector of the lap or the race so far. Hamilton is in fourth, Leclerc in fifth, Sainz still right behind him in sixth place, and then Perez up to seventh after that move. Alonso eighth, falling away already to the tune of 1.8 seconds from him. Ninth is Hülkenberg, and 10th at the moment, just in the points, is Lance Stroll.
Just adding insult to injury for Zhou Guanyu's day, he's just been given a 5-second penalty as well by race direction. So after what could have been an amazing race for him starting from P5, he's down in P15 with that time penalty.
and a very early pit stop here for Alex Albon. A good pit stop, 2.8 seconds, but that's a really early stop for the Williams. Whether that was scheduled or not, we'll find out, but just came to it as he was leaving the pit lane. So Williams trying to get up the order here on a circuit they knew wouldn't quite suit their car, but the upward spiral, the upward performance curve for Williams of late has been pretty encouraging. Right, next job for Fernando Alonso then is to try and fend off Nico Hülkenberg in 9th place, because the Haas is getting a little bit closer to him. Last lap it was a 1:27.1 for Alonso, but a 1:26.2 for Hülkenberg was quite a bit quicker, so he's going to be well within DRS zone next time they get onto the start-finish straight.
I mean, Fernando's got a bit of a train forming behind him even. It's going all the way down to Magnussen or Zhou even in 15th, so a lot of cars within a second of each other there, and a lot of them diving into the pit lane now.
Yeah, only 10 laps complete, so different strategies as we thought might play out here with the softer tyres that we've got. 3 all coming in together. Stroll, Tsunoda and Bottas all coming into the pits as one, so a race between the pit teams now, and all 3 of them on the soft tyre as well, so that's not lasted long. It's a softer tyre than the compound they had last year. Looked like a good stop for Aston Martin as Stroll got out at the head of the queue. He's got out ahead of Bottas for sure, you can see from the camera angle, so they're about to rejoin now. He has indeed got out well at the head of the queue there.
That's an awful pit stop for Tsunoda. 7.3 seconds at standstill, so he's lost a couple of places there.
The only soft shod runner is Carlos Sainz still out there. He's not come in, so it'll be worth watching and seeing how long he can make that last. Everybody else has ditched those softer tyres. The temperature's just so hot here. We've got a track temperature of 49.5 degrees and 29 now ambient. Really,
the advantage of the soft would have been in the first couple of laps. I mean, we saw that Carlos Sainz was all over the back of Charles Leclerc at the start, his teammate. He's now dropped off to the tune of about 2.5 seconds, so we're already seeing that soft compound starting to struggle just a little bit. It's not quite dropped off the cliff, as they say, not disastrous, but here's his radio now.
And switch positions, Sierra. I think it's too early. I don't feel too bad. Copy, understood.
So that was the team radio for Sainz. Switch position, Sierra, and I think it's a bit too early, says Sainz. That's deferred to him, and he's just behind, well, he's 2.5 seconds behind his teammate now, Charles Leclerc. The Ferraris in 5th and 6th. Right, we've had the first 10 laps of the race as Tsunoda comes into the stop on his replay. We have a look at that now. So perhaps different strategies, earlier stops, different starts in terms of different compounds of tyres. Let's get the thoughts on this early stage of the race from Andrew Benson, the BBC chief F1 writer.
I think we now know, don't we, that switch position Sierra at Ferrari means you're about to pit, and Sainz was saying, no, I'm not, thanks very much, my tyres are fine. He's the only one who's making those softs last, but having said that, he is beginning to drop back from Charles Leclerc, his teammate, quite significantly. He's 2.5 seconds back now. When he was first 2 laps, he was within a second of him. The race has really settled down. Verstappen started to stretch his lead. He's 3.5 seconds in front. Piastri is comfortable ahead of Norris. I think Hamilton looks like he's within 2 seconds of Norris. He's probably just biding his time. But it seems like there's 2 or 3 races developing. You've got Verstappen, Piastri, Norris. Well, Verstappen on his own probably it'll turn out, but Verstappen, Piastri, Norris and Hamilton at the top battling for the podium positions, and then we'll have to see how the Ferraris get on against Perez trying to come through behind them. Alonso looks like he's struggling a little bit. If he's struggling to hold off a Haas in 8th place, that doesn't augur that well for the Aston Martin's race pace.
No, exactly right, and just to show how badly this start of the race has gone for the Alphas as well, Bottas came out from his pit stop, which was a bodged pit stop as well, not that far in front of Albon, given that Bottas started the race in 7th place on the grid and Alexander Albon starting in 16th. That has really squandered a great opportunity for the Alphas after a great day yesterday in qualifying. Right, Verstappen is doing what Max Verstappen does. He's getting his head down, he's building an advantage. He's 4.1 seconds clear, and Oscar Piastri, although there was a couple of sectors a couple of laps ago where Norris was catching him, has still kept his teammate behind him and has actually grown the gap now to just over 2 seconds, and it's 2.2 seconds between Norris and Hamilton, so those gaps staying the same. Sainz on that soft tyre staying out as we've said, so we'll see how he goes. But the fastest lap of the race has just gone to Valtteri Bottas, back in 15th place with a 1:24.2.
Those Alphas love that hard tyre, don't they? They've been strong on that compound all weekend, but a few moments ago you could just hear the onboard sounds of the McLaren of Piastri, and he was looking really, really smooth and soft with his inputs there, very gentle with that medium tyre, so he's clearly trying to get that to last, and looking like he's doing a pretty good job. Bit of lift and coast as he's going into the braking zone, just to not shock the tyre too much when he gets on the brake pedal. Really slowly adding that steering lock into the corner, not again asking too much, and just looking pretty comfortable at the moment.
And of course we've got hot temperatures here. Over the last few races, McLaren have been saying, it's the cooler conditions that suit us, but I think this is confirmation that the upgrade that they brought back in Austria, obviously then supplementing that with extra bits and pieces in Silverstone and here, it obviously means their performance is here to stay. Would you agree, Andrew?
It certainly looks like it. I mean, Andreas Dell, the team principal, has just been saying they basically just added downforce. The car equally across the whole car, so it still behaves the same way. There's still things the drivers don't like about it. But I think that's the case about any racing car. Even quick ones have vices that drivers would rather dial out if they could, but obviously the team just wanted to be as quick as possible. So it does augur really well, and Hamilton's 2.3 seconds behind Norris at the moment. He's not looking like he can do anything about those McLarens. Here's some radio from Piastri.
They're looking for maximum pace to target lap, maximum pace for target lap.
Copy.
What we've got to bear in mind, though, is that all of these drivers right now will be thinking about tyre life, when's the optimum pit stop time. They don't want to mess anything up in terms of their overall race strategy. So they won't be, even if they could go faster, they might just be holding position for now, letting the race settle down for a bit, keeping their tyres in good shape, and then live to fight a bit later on.
Just keeping an eye on the gap between the Ferraris and Perez in the Red Bull in 7th place as well. He's been chipping away at that gap, and he's got it down to less than a second now as they come onto the start-finish straights. There could be an imminent attack from the Red Bull. He's on the hard tyre, Sainz is on the soft tyre, which is the stickier, quicker tyre, but in these very hot conditions, it will start to overheat pretty soon. And we've got now coming into the pits the second of the Williams, Logan Sargent, who started at the back of the grid. So he comes in. In terms of those on mediums, which are all the key front runners, the first 5 drivers, we're expecting the first pit stop somewhere between lap 17 and 24 is the target. So Sargent comes in the Williams, and they're trying something slightly different to his teammate here, which they might as well do from their grid position, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's just bolted on a new set of the hard tyre. The hard compound does look like it's pretty favourable. I'd say that's looking like the tyre to be on at the moment, with the pace that people who have pitted showing from about 13th or so down. That's both the Alfa Romeos that we've talked about, who are both looking quick. Now it's Guan Yu Zhao who's actually got the quickest lap, so they're trading it between them, the two Alfas. It's brilliant to see. Those on the medium will really be looking to make it last and try and just gain every extra last little lap out of them that they can. Piastri's engineer saying we want maximum pace to the target lap, so he's basically saying the target lap that we've predicted for the pit stop before the race, whenever that would be, we want you to just manage these tyres and just try and pace it as well as you can to that lap.
Yeah, and bear in mind the hard tyre this year is the equivalent to what was the medium tyre last year, because they're all 1 degree softer in terms of the compounds that Pirelli have brought for this one. Right, we've got an onboard view right on the nose of the Red Bull as Perez goes on the attack here on Sainz to try and get that position away. They're coming out of turn 1. It drops downhill, 6th gear down to 4th as they go into the left-hander at turn 2. Sainz radio.
If I see Checo is going to pass me, I will call box, but not yet. Understood. Good call.
I'm not sure that is a great call. I wouldn't wait to be passed to do that pit stop. Pretty much everyone else who was on the soft has now done a pit stop and swapped onto that much better hard compound tyre. Sainz clearly feeling that he's got something left in that tyre, but he can't see the timing screens like his engineers can. And if I were him, I'd be wanting to jump on that hard pretty soon. He's losing more and more time to his teammate Leclerc in front. If he gets passed by Checo as well, that'll lose a boatload of time just by battling wheel to wheel.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. He's doing his favour for his teammate here, Leclerc, isn't he? Because he's suddenly 3 seconds in front of Sainz. If Sainz keeps the Red Bull behind, that helps his teammate out. 15 laps complete. We're on lap 16, and we've got a 6.1 second lead as the Ferrari mechanics sprint out of the garage with a set of hard tyres ready. So Verstappen leads by 7 seconds now from Piastri. Norris is in 3rd, 2 seconds behind his teammate. 4th is Hamilton. 5th is Leclerc. Perez 6th now because Carlos Sainz comes into the pits, hits the limiter, locks the front left as he comes in to slow the car down for the pit lane speed limit, brings the Ferrari in. The soft tyres will be exchanged for a brand spanking shiny new set of hard tyres, and out goes the Ferrari. The team had a couple of slow pit stops for Sainz at this venue last year, but that looked okay.
Yeah, that was pretty tidy. He's going to come out and get those up to speed fairly quickly. Like we said, the warm-up of those tyres, not a big issue. He's just going to filter out in front of Stroll, and he is now in 11th place with Ricciardo, who's had a bit of a difficult start to the race, just in front of him. Just while we're at a little lull here, we are keeping an eye on the track limits situation, because there are people that are getting warnings for this. Hamilton radio.
Okay, so it's hammer time.
And there it is, the famous call. So they clearly want him to box fairly soon and try and close the gap to the McLarens in front of him. Just get the most out of those mediums that he can. But yeah, there's a few track limits calls that are going on, and they will have a quota that the race director will have given them, say 2 or 3 times before they will start to get penalties, as we saw in the Red Bull Ring not long ago.
Well, the onboard view now, right above the rainbow liveried helmet of Lewis Hamilton as he comes into the pit lane. So he's putting his quickest in lap. Right on board with him now as he gets to the pit lane entry, slows the car down to the speed limit and waits to turn into the Mercedes pit box. There they all are then, ready with the tyres. Comes in, lollipop and stops him, and before you know it, in the blink of an eye, 2.8 seconds, he is released again. Incidentally, the whole pit stop around here under normal conditions with your in and out should take around about 21 seconds. That was 21.9 seconds all told, so that was pretty good. And now he's got to defend position here as he comes out in front of the Alpha Tauri of Tsunoda, who is right behind him, but I don't think he's going to be able to attack as he gets down into turn 2. And fends him, Ricciardo rather, and fends him off for 8th place. So 8th place he comes back out in, just behind George Russell, who's now up to 7th from 18th on the grid.
It'll be interesting to see the reaction from the McLarens in front. You would expect that Norris might want to cover this off, because the pace of that hard has been quite good. We're just watching the sector times, and indeed Norris has just set his personal best in sector 2, so it looks like he may have gotten the call from the McLaren engineer in pit wall to say, look, you need to step on it now, and there it is. We just got confirmation on the screen that McLaren have asked him to box this lap.
So Hamilton's gone from the medium to the hard tyre, and Norris is going to do exactly the same thing. And this is what we said earlier before the race, Jack. At this circuit, you have a plan of where you're going to stop, but you have to react to what everybody else around you is doing. And that looks exactly like what McLaren have done here as Norris comes in.
Yep, it's going to be nice and easy into the box for Norris, not a big rush. Everything looks nice and tidy, and it's a good stop for him, so no major dramas. The next in line will be Piastri. I'd expect they bring him in on the next lap.
Charles Leclerc in as well. So 2.3 seconds at that stop was half a second quicker for Norris, the actual stop time, than it was for Hamilton. But the stop time for Leclerc, 9.4 seconds. He's had an absolute nightmare there after what was a pretty good start to the race. He's gone on the hard tyre as well. So he is going to slot out just in front of, or just alongside, the Alfa Romeo here of Bottas, who tries to come alongside him on the way through turn 1 down the inside. The inside line for turn 2, the left-hander though belongs to the Ferrari. Crucially keeps him at bay, but Leclerc is 11th place as a result of that nightmare. They lost around about 6 seconds in that stop.
He's easily given up 2 if not 3 positions on track there. That's a nightmare, and most importantly he's fallen now behind his teammate Sainz. He will not be happy about that. But we've also just seen now that Piastri is being called into the box, as you'd expect. So the 2 McLarens boxing line astern. You'd expect Piastri to still hold position over Norris as he comes out after the stop, if all goes well.
It's going to be tight. There's only about 21 seconds between Piastri and Norris at the moment. That's about what it takes to come in and out. So it needs to be a good stop. It was a really good stop for Norris. As I say, 2.3 seconds stationary. Piastri has come into the bits. He hits the mark. He stops the car. They change the fronts and rears, and out he goes again. Do we get the stop time up? It looked pretty good to the eye, but was it as good as Norris is here? Piastri leaves the pits now. It was better, exactly 2 seconds, and he comes out in front of Norris, comes out of the bleed line here into turn 1, trying to go around the outside is Norris. Norris has got his nose in front. Can Piastri fight back? No is the answer. So just coming out is Norris. Now Norris's stop time wasn't as good as Piastri's, so that says that the in and out lap must have been really good for Lando.
Yeah, well, you know that the undercut is quite powerful at this track, so Norris was probably able to use that fresh rubber and just jump ahead of him basically on his outlap. Slightly contentious. If I was Piastri, I'd be feeling a little bit hard done by, because Norris was effectively reacting to the stop of Hamilton, and then Piastri was then reacting to that. When he had track position before, normally in a team you would get the preferential stop if you're in the lead on track, and this hasn't happened in this case. So I wonder if they might swap those positions back to keep things fair. is a very hard call for the McLaren pit wall.
Interestingly, just to show that he knew exactly what he needed to do, Norris set the absolute best first sector time as he was chasing down his teammate then as well. That was the difference in the end. It was tight, but he made it through and ahead. Verstappen was still waiting for to pit. We had 20 of the 70 laps complete. Perez up to second, Hamilton radio.
Now they got 9 seconds all of a sudden. That's a crazy amount.
What's interesting about that McLaren strategy is that although it was sensible to stop Norris and protect against Hamilton, he didn't actually need to stop on that lap. He had quite a cushion. He's quite a few seconds ahead of Hamilton now, 5 seconds, 5.8 seconds. So I think you're right, Jack. Piastri's got every reason to be aggrieved there, because in theory they could have stopped Piastri first and Norris would probably still have been safe against Hamilton. It would have been a bigger risk, and they would argue that they're still in second and third place as a team, so it's the right call. But if you're looking at it from the selfish point of a racing driver, it's definitely a questionable call.
Charles Leclerc going for the move on the way to turn 2 to get at the inside of the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll, and that was crucial. He's got himself up to 9th place. He got close through turn 1. We saw it from the onboard, and it was a late dive, a late lunge at the end of the second DRS zone, but the Ferrari getting ahead of the Aston Martin. So Verstappen leads by 21.6 seconds from Perez, so he's got more than a pit stop time in hand over his teammate. Alonso is third, Norris is fourth, Piastri is fifth, Russell sixth, Hamilton seventh, and then Sainz eighth, and Leclerc up to 9th now with Stroll still in the points. Good move that, wasn't it, from Leclerc? And he really had to get that job done. He couldn't afford another lap behind the Aston Martin.
It was assertive, which is what you need when you're coming through effectively traffic, as you're not fighting them with the pit stop strategies intertwining. You need to get through them as quick as you can. But we're now seeing Alonso in the pit lane. It's only Verstappen who's going longer than him on the medium tyre, so this is an impressive first stint for Alonso, and he was doing good lap times at the end as well.
Yeah, in he comes. So George Russell, who's going different to everybody else. He started on the hard time, moves up another place, up to 5th position. Alonso is released by the Aston Martin team. It's not a great stop, that. 3.4 seconds. Sounds bizarre, doesn't it, to say 3.4 seconds is slow, but relative to the others, it wasn't great. The Aston Martin is going to come out behind the Alfa Romeo of Bottas, so that will be rejoining in 11th place. And he'll have to sit at least one lap behind Bottas now, because there's no way he's going to lunge down the inside at turn 2. So we'll see what he can do from there.
Yeah, it shows how fine the margins are. If they'd had a 1 second fast stop, this is Piastri.
What do you want me to do here?
For the moment, look after the tyre, priority target lap. We want to get to plan A, target lap.
Well, there you go. That was what do you want me to do then, says Oscar Piastri. Finding his feet still, the rookie, but after that brilliant 4th place finish, and very close to being on the podium as well at Silverstone. You can feel the confidence growing all the time with Oscar, a Formula 2, Formula 3 and Formula Renault Euro Cup champion, so great prospects. But having been 2 seconds in front of his teammate before the pit stops, he's now 2.4 seconds behind him.
Yeah, he sounded a little bit peeved off there, just a little bit, not major drama, but I can understand why he feels that way. It is a big advantage getting 1 lap of undercut with these tyres the way that they are. So his engineer just trying to keep things cool and calm, and just say, look, let's stick to the plan. You've got good pace, which he clearly does. Stick with Norris, take care of the tyres, and we'll see where things shake out when this second stop comes around.
Right, here we go, round 1, Alfa Romeo versus Aston Martin, because you've got Fernando Alonso trying to get that place back. He goes to the outside on the way to turn 1, he cuts back to the inside on the way out of the corner. He's got his nose in front, he is on the outside for the next turn at turn 2, the left-hander, but he's got the job done before they get to the braking zone, and Alonso through at the first time of asking to get that place back away and put himself back into the top 10 now. So Verstappen grows his advantage to 22.7 seconds over Perez. Norris has set in 2 fastest laps of the race now, including last time around, as we get a replay of a really canny move here, Jack, from Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, it was a really good dummy, effectively, to push Bottas to the inside, give him a compromised line through turn 1, and then he went wide, cut back for a late apex, and got a really nice exit with those fresh hard tyres. Of course, Bottas has been out on his hard tyres for a little bit longer now, so not quite as good traction, and with the help of DRS into turn 2, it was an easy move.
Face full of sparks as well as he came behind and then alongside the Alfa Romeo. So Max Verstappen leads with 22 laps complete now by almost 23 seconds from Perez, who started 9th on the grid.
So Verstappen getting the call for box, so he's finally going to come in. He's the last one out there on the medium tyres. He's really stretched the stint. He has the luxury of doing so because he has that pace advantage, and now they're going to have relatively an easier stint for the second half of the race. Just out of interest, on the last time around, the two McLarens, identical lap times to the 1,000th Piastri and Norris.
And he should be able to come out with time in hand to still be the leader of the race here, Verstappen. That's how much advantage he has built. Norris is third then, behind the two Red Bulls. Piastri in fourth, Russell in fifth, Mercedes in sixth place. Russell on pole position here last year and a podium finisher. Then it's the two Ferraris, Sainz in seventh, Leclerc in eighth after that bad pit stop. Stroll in ninth place, Alonso rounding out the top 10 as the championship leader makes his way into the pits, and he's going to switch tyres now to the hard tyre from the medium as well.
We've got a very nice symmetrical top 10 at the moment. The two Red Bulls, two McLarens, two Mercedes, two Ferraris, and the two Aston Martins. And then it's ruined after that, so just look at the top 10.
Which is the sort of polar opposite of qualifying, where it was all completely mixed up, wasn't it? Right, Verstappen comes out. It's 2.3 seconds, the stationary time. So he comes out still around about 10, 11 car lengths clear of Perez, who has had to start on the hard tyre, try something different from ninth on the grid. So still the leader of the race, and with his pit stop complete.
So Lance is 2.4 ahead. He'll let us pass once we get to DRS.
That's team radio for Alonso, and nice comforting radio note that is for Fernando Alonso to say, well, when you get to him, your teammate's going to let you through.
He's almost credited those chips earlier in the season, hasn't he, by playing quite nice with Stroll at times, and this is the payback, because it is important for Alonso now. He's on the fresher hard tyre. He doesn't want to get held up by his teammate and deal with all of that, so just having the engineer say, yeah, don't worry, it's covered, that's really nice.
Yeah, so Alonso marches on. He is in 10th place. His teammate is in 9th position. He's still got a way to go. He's 2.8 seconds adrift of him on lap 24 of 70. We heard the team radio early on in the race from Lewis Hamilton apologising to the team for the bodge starts. Most unlike him, actually, because as Jack mentioned at the start of the race, he's normally a very good starter. So Perez has come into the pits now, or is going to. We've got still Norris in third place with the fastest lap of the race. So Perez comes in then to make his first stop of the race, 25 laps in, and he was on the hard tyre, as we mentioned. Comes in and he switches, doing the opposite to everybody else in the top 5. Goes on to the medium tyre, pretty decent stop, 2.8 seconds.
A little bit of info then for the drivers who switched onto that hard tyre, of how long that hard tyre will last in race conditions and when they might now need to pit again. Obviously, it's going to be a two-stop, which hasn't always been the case in Hungary, has it?
Yeah, it's certainly looking that way at the moment, because Perez didn't take those hard tyres as far as I was expecting, and the medium we've already seen, it's not the most robust here, so I think it's heavily swinging to a two-stop. Some teams that are trying to do something a bit different may push their drivers to either try and save or not. Here's Hamilton.
Where am I losing all the time? Just the car slow.
So a lot of it is straight line, then turn 11 and turn 14.
You're turning the engine down.
Negative, we are doing things to improve temp situation there.
Turning the engine down, so you can't quite understand why it's so slow. Now, Lewis Hamilton has said turn 11, which is a really quick corner. Your favourite corner on the whole lap. That's one where he's lost time. Turn 4, I think, was the other one where he said he's been losing time. But the end of the lap there, the very relatively slow right-hand hairpin at turn 14, losing time there. In a replay of him. I'll get team radio from Russell.
Okay, so we let Lewis through this lap.
Yeah, a replay of him passing his teammate. His teammate made life very easy, so that was a delayed transmission, but Russell let Hamilton through. Having made his pit stop and switched to the medium tyre, Perez came out in between the two Ferraris, so he's in 7th place now, behind Sainz but ahead of Leclerc, but that is more to do with the fact that Leclerc had a bad pit stop than any great strategy or improvement from Perez. So Verstappen leads. He is 5.2 seconds clear of Norris. Piastri is 3rd. Hamilton is 4th. Russell 5th. Sainz in 6th. Perez 7th now after his stop. Leclerc in 8th. Stroll in 9th. Alonso in 10th place. Chris Hartley here to talk you through the Hungarian Grand Prix with a Grand Prix racer and ex-Williams and Renault reserve driver Jack Aitken alongside me, Rosanna Tennant, and the BBC F1 chief writer Andrew Benson to talk you through the race as well. So it's all going swimmingly for the race leader here, Verstappen, isn't it? And much easier than we'd anticipated for him.
Yeah, and just looking through the top 10 now, Russell, who's quite generous to give Hamilton that position on track, he is still, of course, yet to do his first pit stop. He's trying to take those hards a little bit longer than Perez managed to on lap 26 now. If he can get towards the halfway point of the race, I'd say that would be quite an achievement for him. His pace is okay, but it's not great, and he's now got Carlos Sainz bearing down on him on the same compound, but much younger, of course.
I'm very interested by the way that the cars change and behave. We had Lewis Hamilton on Friday saying that the car was at its worst. Yesterday he puts it on pole, said it felt amazing. And then today he's saying he's just not very fast. Andrew, is this a symptom or a characteristic of these new cars, or is it actually just more symptomatic as we see a battle there between Carlos Sainz and Perez?
And Perez, wheel to wheel, down the inside, and he gets past Carlos Sainz to gain that position up to 6th place then. Everybody except for Perez is on the hard tyre. Perez is on the medium tyre, so he should have better braking capabilities, better traction, and needed to get that job done. Yeah, back to you, Andrew.
So that radio message to me sounded like the interesting point of it was what Peter Bonington, the race engineer, who everyone knows as Bono, was saying in the final answer. Are you turning the engine down? Hamilton said. Bono said no initially, but then he said we are doing things to manage the temperature situation, which basically sounds to me, Jack, like he's saying yes, we are, because the engine's overheating.
Yeah,
diplomacy.
I don't think there's anything you can really do to make the engine better while it's overheating. So I think he's just trying to keep Hamilton calm there, isn't it? It's so much about using language when your driver's in the heat of the moment, and Bono and Lewis have a very long-standing relationship, so he knows how to get the best out of Lewis. We're just getting a replay on board with Perez as he gets that position into turn 1, wheel to wheel with Carlos. Carlos is managing to stay fairly close to him, but yeah, it's with the medium for Perez warming up a little bit quicker, he's going to get a nice sort of shot of pace in these first few laps out of the pits. He will then have to start hanging on to them as they degrade quicker than the mediums.
We've got an interesting situation developing here at Ferrari, because Leclerc is caught right up behind Sainz. And if you remember, he's only behind him because Ferrari messed up his pit stop. So what are they going to do? I don't think Sainz is going to be that keen to let him by, but if the right thing to do, or some more overtake from Perez.
Yeah, Perez about to lunge down the inside of Russell on the way into turn 2. That was a good move, really threw it down the inside, but Russell comes back on him on the way out of the corner. They almost touch wheels. Russell almost got fully alongside, and they almost came together there. If there wasn't contact, it was very close to it. But a really good move that from Perez to get himself up to 5th place. But Andrew's absolutely right. The two Ferraris are getting closer together, but they're also catching up George Russell now.
That was really, really close. So Perez, we're going to get a replay of it now. He gets a good launch out of turn 1, and then just the straight line speed of that Red Bull is really impressive. Dives down the inside into turn 2. George was half covering it but didn't commit. Keeps it around the outside of Perez. Perez shows him the door, and as they get towards the exit, where of course the outside for George turns into the inside for turn 3, Perez almost gives him a bit of body language just to say, no way, you're not staying there, son. And they almost interlock wheels, and that could have been a huge shunt if George hadn't backed out when he did.
Yeah, the front left of Russell was in between the front right and the rear right of the Red Bull, but that was a hairy, scary moment. So Russell reacts to that by coming into the pits now and brings the Mercedes in after a long stint, trying something different here, as he needs to do from 18th on the grid, having gone out in Q1 yesterday, and he's got absolutely brand new tyres ready for him, shiny new tyres put on, and they are the medium tyre now, so he is going to come down the pit lane and rejoin. He's going to have clean air, clean track. No, he's not, because there's a queue of cars coming down the line now, and he's going to come out just in front, just behind the Haas of Nico Hülkenberg, and so in front of the Alfa Romeo of Zhou Guanyu. So that will put the second Mercedes 14th at the moment.
And just to pick up on that Ferrari thing, they've not only got the issue of do they ask Sainz to let Leclerc by, because at the moment Sainz is holding Leclerc up. Behind them, Alonso is going much faster than them, and we know he's about to be let by his teammate Stroll. Then he'll have a clear run at the Ferraris. So they've got
It's already happened. Stroll has let him through just now.
Right, so there you go. There's the Aston Martin to swap position. So now Ferrari have got a double quandary. They've got within team politics to deal with between do they let the driver by, and
that never happens.
And they've got an angry Alonso closing in on them at about half a second a lap.
Politics at Ferrari.
Sounds fun to me. I want to see this show. But yeah, we're just getting an onboard of Alonso getting past Stroll. He's been given the order. He's obviously got close enough that dirty air will start to affect them. But Yeah, it's going to be interesting how that plays out over the next few laps. Just looking a bit further down the field, after his first lap tangle, which really wasn't his fault, but wrong place, wrong time, Daniel Ricciardo is firmly in last place of the remaining runners, and he has been there pretty much through the whole first half of this race. And I don't know if he's carrying damage, but he hasn't been able to jump the Williams of Sargent in the pit stops, and he's just within a second of him now.
On board with Russell, DRS down the inside of Hulkenberg on the way into the first corner. He just needs to cover up off the line on the way out of the turn, which he does. He actually had a nibble at the inside of Hulkenberg a couple of corners after he came out of the pit stops, but he had to wait a whole lap in the end to get past. So that will put Russell up to 13th position now. Ricciardo makes his stop, and that's in 2.9 seconds. And Sergio Perez is doing what Sergio Perez does. He's having a bad Saturday, but a pretty good Sunday. He's just set the fastest lap of the race in the Red Bull, and he's in 5th place now, and he's starting to catch Lewis Hamilton. He's still 5.3 seconds behind him, but that lap was 1:23.19, which was around about 8/10 quicker.
Just bear limit.
And that was Perez radio. Just reel him in. Well, he's absolutely doing that at the moment, isn't he? Remember, he's on the medium tyre, and everybody around him, around Perez, is on the hard tyre, so he should be quicker.
Yeah, he's really making that tyre work for him. And with a bit of the fuel load having burned off since the start of the race now, the car being lighter, you tend to see the softer compound start to become a little bit more usable as the race goes on. So perhaps that's what we're seeing here. But pace really good for Perez. He's gained over half a second on Hamilton just in the last lap alone, so he's really motoring up to the back of that Mercedes.
Yeah, Hamilton's trying to respond. He set his own personal best lap time there with a 1:23.7, but it's still 7/10 of a second down. And then we see Russell moving past Tsunoda now. So Tsunoda has lost the place pretty easily, it has to be said, on the way into turn 1. And that will put George Russell up now into 12th position. He too on the medium tyre. So everybody on the hards except for Perez in 5th. Russell in 12th place. He's just gone past Tsunoda. And then the other one that switched to the medium tyre now, and he's last of the runners currently, is Daniel Ricciardo. Replay of the move we're going to get from George Russell on Tsunoda, and DRS at the end of the start-finish straight. And in fairness, the Japanese driver made life pretty easy for him, didn't he?
Yeah, he knew the faster car was coming behind him and didn't want to make a hash of things, so just left the door open for George, and he duly centred up the inside. But that medium tyre also looking like it's working pretty well for Mercedes, so perhaps a bit of rubber going down on track, fuel load burning off. It's starting to look a bit more attractive for people at the end of the race.
Initial thoughts on this compound?
So further grip is not bad, but the tyre feels definitely a bit more stiff. So it's easier to have a moment or whatever.
Understood.
So it's interesting talking that he's effectively having a debrief mid-Grand Prix with his engineer. Shows how relaxed he is. But he's talking there about the difference in compound between the hard and the medium, and saying that, yeah, it feels a bit stiffer and I can have a moment a bit easier. That tends to happen because if you have less flex in the casing of the tyre and you really start to lean it over and really ask a lot from the compound, when it does eventually start to give and slip, a medium tyre is more likely to adapt and let the contact patch sort of meld to the surface, whereas a hard might just skip across and effectively give you a nasty little snap.
Alex Albon has just made his second stop. He's gone back onto hard tyres, new hard tyres. Good stop as well from Williams on the occasion of their 800th Grand Prix, their second weekend running with a special 800th livery for Williams Grand Prix. It was meant to be at Silverstone, but we had the cancellation of the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, but they decided in the home race to run the 800 livery 2 weeks ago. Anyway, but this is the 800th race, and so it looks like with only 32 laps complete when he came in of the 70, Alex Albon is probably going to go for a 3-stop strategy here and maybe switch to the softs at the end of the race to try and go on the attack.
Certainly looks that way. I think a 1-stop is pretty much out of the question for most people. It's just too hard out there with the temperatures soaring. But a 3-stop can definitely come into play if drivers start suffering a bit more than they expected with the tyre, or if they want to try and perform a bit of an undercut and try and get around some traffic that they're stuck behind. So it'll be interesting to watch that fastest lap of the race now, just going to Russell in 11th place. So that medium tyre is still working very well for him and for Perez. It's holding on well.
Yeah, 1:23.014 for George Russell in 11th place. That is 2.5 tenths quicker than the race leader, Max Verstappen, who's actually just set a personal best lap time as well. So calm enough to have a chat with his race engineer over the radio and discuss the time, but also quick enough still to be able to set his personal best lap of the race. There were a couple of laps, a few laps ago, where Norris was very much hanging on to him. The gap remained at just over 5 seconds, but of late, that has grown to 8.7 seconds now. So Verstappen leads, Norris in second place, and 9.5 seconds as they go through the line. Piastri is nearly, or just over 6 seconds behind his teammate Norris now, but in third place, remember, on course, maybe, for his first podium in Formula One. Hamilton is 7 seconds behind Piastri in fourth place. Perez is 3.1 seconds now behind Hamilton, and on that lap was 3 tenths quicker
than the Ferraris.
Yeah, let's put some pressure.
Yeah, sounds good.
So that's Alonso's radio, and his race engineer saying, right, you're a couple of tenths quicker than the Ferraris that you're trying to catch. Let's put a bit of pressure on.
He's looking good. We're on board with him now, and he's definitely pushing on a little bit more. He's got lovely free air in front of him, which is just what you want to see, especially around this track where it's so hard to overtake. And he's pushing into it now, trying to make the most of it. He's got 6.8 seconds to Leclerc, and as his engineer was saying, the pace is looking pretty encouraging compared to both Ferraris.
We're about to see George Russell get into the top 10 pretty soon as well. He's only 1.4 seconds behind Bottas as they went through, catching the Alphas in 11th place. He was 3/4 of a second quicker on that lap. You know, Russell a couple of laps ago set the fastest lap of the race. He's got the gap down to less than a second now, so he's within DRS zone next time they get to the DRS zone, and there should be a switch next time around for that 10th position. Russell having what seems like a pretty good race here. We'll have to see how it all pans out with the strategy, but he's doing okay from near the back of the grid.
The other Mercedes of Hamilton is also looking pretty good. I don't know, obviously, if Hamilton has decided to push on a little bit more after that conversation he had with his engineer, which altogether wasn't that constructive really, but he's a second a lap quicker, near enough, than the McLaren of Piastri in front of him, who himself, you were saying that Norris and Verstappen, the gap's grown a bit. Well, the gap between Piastri and Norris has also grown out at a similar rate. So Hamilton's starting to bear down on that final podium spot, while Perez is also trying to make himself, get himself into contention for it too. So everything's kind of coming together there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jack. Fifth is catching fourth is catching third. Could be quite tasty, this, in a few laps' time. We're halfway into the Hungarian Grand Prix, then the 38th Hungarian Grand Prix, with 35 of the 70 laps complete. Now we get the helmet cam of George Russell, who is going to dive down the inside at turn 1 to get past the Alfa Romeo of Valtteri Bottas. Through he goes, down the inside of the ex-Mercedes driver, of course. That puts him into the top 10.
Yeah, it was a pretty straightforward move. Bottas doing similar to Tsunoda with Russell there, knowing that his fate was inevitable and just opening the door saying, yeah, on you go, don't hold me up too much while you do it, please.
Yeah, and there's no point fighting, is there, when you're in that situation, because all he's going to do, even if he blocks and weaves, he's just going to slow himself down and ruin his own strategy.
Well, Bottas in that Alpha is still very much in contention for points, and that team, they're desperate for points at the moment. It's a very tight battle for the bottom 3 teams, so Bottas right now, he's just in a time trial mode, just get this stint done as quickly as he can, and yeah, knowing Russell was going to always pass him, there's no point fighting wheel to wheel for over a lap and losing 2-3 seconds.
Perez 5th, Russell 9th now, and Ricciardo 17th for the ones on the medium tyre, and Ricciardo has just set his personal best lap of the race, a 1:24.031, so he's going on the attack. We've got a pretty decent battle at the side of the points for 14th place between Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. The onboard that you can hear is from the Aston Martin of the Canadian driver Lance Stroll, who is right behind him really now as they come through towards the final sector of the lap. So he's got to line up a move here, hasn't he, coming out of the last turn?
Gap 7 seconds, podium's on.
That was the race engineer for Perez. The gap 7 seconds. You've got a chance of a podium, but let's go back to this battle, Jack. This looks like a pretty decent run for the Aston. It's good there, isn't it, at the end of the lap, in terms of traction? He's getting close to the Haas now. Yeah,
he's done well, just picking a line that's staying with getting some clean air onto his nose, going where the Haas doesn't. And the Haas of Magnussen not putting up too much of a fight, because Stroll got such a good exit off the last corner that he knew that he wasn't going to be able to defend. Magnussen looks to cut back potentially, but can't do it, and the DRS for Stroll opens up and he takes that position into the second corner.
You still got to have your wits about you there. You get that DRS, and Andrea Stella, the team principal at McLaren, reckoned it was another 16 kilometres an hour. So you're going into turn 1 much quicker than you normally would. It's normally 190 miles an hour. You're going in around about 10 miles an hour quicker than that. And every time somebody dives down the inside with DRS, they go really deep into the corner at turn 1, don't they?
Yeah, you instinctively know that you've got to brake earlier, but by how much? And especially when someone's really fighting you for a position, every metre on the brake counts, and that's where the best drivers make the difference. So it's very, very difficult, especially with such a long run to turn one here.
Right, next battle to watch for fourth place, because Perez has got the gap to Hamilton down to 1.7 seconds now. So he's coming after the Mercedes in the battle for fourth place. Hamilton, as are most of the drivers, are on the hard tyre at this stage of the race, but Perez trying something different. He started on the hard, he's now on the medium tyre, and he's much quicker. So it could even be on the next lap that he's within contention to get into DRS and attack the 7-time world champion.
So in Hamilton's position, if I was him, I'd be really hoping that he can somehow get to the back of that McLaren and get the DRS before the Red Bull gets there, because the Red Bull is known for its straight line speed. It's very quick, and they're going to need every last kilometre an hour they need to make the difference for an overtake here. And if Hamilton doesn't have DRS, it's really going to make the move, or the defence I should say, quite tricky for him.
Yeah, the hope for Hamilton is that Mercedes is good in the lower speed corners, the traction, which is what you get at the end of the lap before you get to the DRS detection zone. So that's pretty much a 90-degree right-hander through turns 12, and then left-hander hairpin at 13, left-hander hairpin at 14. But he's still quite a long way back on Piastri, isn't he?
Yeah, I love tracks like this for that. It becomes a real chess game. Spa's another one where you have concentrated zones where you know an overtake is possible around the start of the lap with a big straight, big DRS, and then the rest of the lap it's not really on, and it's just about, can you get the gap down if you're the car behind, stay in DRS, and if your car in front, saving your tyres, pushing on for the end of the lap to try and break that DRS gap. It's the same here at the Hungarian. So Hamilton, if he does start to get Perez in his DRS, which it looks like he will be on this lap, he's now got to be thinking, how do I get the traction really, really nice out of the last corner, save the tyres a little bit through sector 2 and punch it in sector 3.
Okay, Lando. What are your thoughts, plan A versus plan C?
Yeah, it depends what everyone else is like, to be honest. The tyres are not bad, but they don't feel that good.
Okay, understood.
So talking about a one-stop there, I think. Lando feeling a bit optimistic about his tyres there, which is surprising to hear. He's got 20 laps on that hard already. He'd have another 30 to go if he was going to try and make it to the end here. That would be a massive stint on the hard.
Just seeing Alex Albon easily get past Kevin Magnussen into turn 1 for 15th place. Yeah, he sounded pretty comfortable with that. We're going to get a replay of this move. It's fairly straightforward. A lot of rubber offline now on that run down the inside on the way into turn 1, which you've got to be a little bit careful about. You've went around here a couple of times at the Hungarian ring, Jack. You talked about that, you love the circuit, the way it's broken down into different kind of levels, different types of corners. But that must be a nightmare for race engineers, because somehow you've got to make a compromise in your setup. You almost want 3 different setups for each part of the lap, don't you?
It is, but at the same time, as an engineer, it's just boiling down to, you need to have a well-balanced car. Some other tracks, it's high downforce versus low downforce. You know, do you want to prioritize a certain section of the track more than others? Here, there are so many different types of corners that come so quickly in such a short space of time. The only thing that you can really do is make sure that the car is feeling nice for the driver, that they can have confidence to push on, which is what Hamilton had in quali yesterday, and that made the difference. So it's a nice challenge for both driver and engineer.
We're on lap 39 of 70. Max Verstappen leads by nearly 14.5 seconds from the McLaren of Lando Norris, who might be thinking about maybe a one-stop. Piastri, his teammate, 7.3 seconds behind in third. Hamilton in fourth, but only a second behind him now. The medium tyre is Perez in 5th place. Sainz is 6th. Leclerc is 7th. There's only 1.7 seconds between the two Ferraris. Alonso in 8th place. Russell in 9th place, also on the medium tyre. And then Bottas in 10th position now. And he's 8 seconds to the good of Tsunoda as well. So looking good, as you say, for potentially a point or 2 for the Alfa Romeo. On-board view here from Sergio Perez. Really good on the brakes thanks to that medium tyre on the way to the first corner, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's really noticeable. His progress has just stalled a little bit. Now that he's getting towards being a second or so behind the Mercedes, he's getting into that dirty air, and not just the dirty air that's disrupting the aerodynamics of that car, robbing him of grip in the high-speed corners. He's also getting all the hot air coming off of the back of that Mercedes, so your brakes are cooking, your tyres are getting hotter. It's really everything that you don't want, so it's why it's so crucial to drive up to the back of someone as quickly as you can, get the move done and move on, So Perez can't linger too long in this danger zone behind Hamilton.
Yeah, it's with the redesign of the Formula 1 cars last year, that dirty air is much less prevalent than it was in the previous style of Formula 1 cars, as the dirty air is thrown high up or higher up into the air now in a sort of mushroom shape. So it is easy to follow. We had 99 overtakes here in the Grand Prix last year, with some plenty of overtakes already, predominantly on the way into turn 1, a couple at turn 2. But you're absolutely right, it's getting more and more difficult for Perez now. Of course, he's on a slightly softer tyre, so that's maybe starting to fade a little bit as well on the medium tyre. But the commentators briefing before the race, Andrea Stella from McLaren was saying, you know, if you're 7 or 8 tenths quicker than somebody, it's hard to get past. You want to be 8-9 tenths of a second at least quicker than them to make life a bit easier.
Yeah, it's a big gap. We're seeing now on board going into turn 1, he closes a lot with DRS and a slipstream going into turn 1, but can't do anything with it. He's still too far back. Now, actually going into turn 2, he's gone over to the outside of the track looking for clean air for his car, just to cool things down a bit behind the Mercedes, because he knows that he's not close enough to get a move done. There's no point sitting in the hot air of that Mercedes for now. So he's going to try and shape up again. Here's Leclerc on the radio.
Check how it's off in terms of strategy, like this, it doesn't make sense.
Copy, understood. We are discussing it and we'll do it at the end.
What do you mean at the end? I mean something...
We are on it. We are on it, okay?
That's a bit of frustration, to say the least, from Charles Leclerc on the radio. I mean, what do you mean at the end we're going to discuss it? We need to discuss it now in the middle of the race so we can do something, because I'm stuck here in 7th place, not least because of the terrible pit stop that I had.
Yeah, and you know, he's sat behind Sainz, has been for a little bit now. If they want to have a shot at the top 5, quite rightly, Leclerc is thinking, well, that's too late. You know, if we do this at the end, this doesn't mean anything. It's an extra position for Leclerc, but for Ferrari as a team, they're not going to win anything out of that. So if they're going to swap, it might make more sense to do it now. Release me, let me go after Perez and Hamilton and Piastri, who might start struggling towards the end. That's what he's thinking. Very frustrating for him.
Valtteri Bottas has had a second pit stop, and he has gone back to the hard tyre now as Perez goes on the attack here on Lewis Hamilton. Sweeps to the outside on the way into turn 1. Tries to cut back on the inside as they go through the kink. He's going to be on the outside line for the left-hander at turn 2, though. He's fully alongside, but he's not quite in front. Hamilton holds the line, makes it a very wide Mercedes, and just about holds on to the lead of the race, but the lead of the position. But that, for 4th place, is as close as Perez has come. But it's still Hamilton there in 4th for now, and probably safe for another lap at least.
Yeah, it was good defence by Hamilton. Perez was really late on the brakes into turn 1 and had to go to the outside because there wasn't really any space, or he wasn't late enough to go to the inside, but it set him up really well for an exit into turn 2 for an attack there, and he got fully alongside Hamilton but on the wrong side of the track. You can do it around the outside of turn 2, but you need to be later on the brakes to get your front wheels ahead of your opponent to claim that piece of track and stop him from closing the door on you on the outside. But here we go, we're into sector 3, and it's going to be another attempt from Perez. Hamilton saying on the radio now that he's starting to lose the rear of those hard tyres. That's not what he needs right now. He needs all the traction that he can get.
So his pace is pretty consistent though over the last few laps. Hamilton 1:24.5 there, was a couple of tenths quicker than the previous, and he comes into the pits now, does Sergio Perez. So he's had enough of this battle with Lewis Hamilton, so the Red Bull is brought in. We've also got another Mercedes about to go on the attack, I think, because Russell catching up to Alonso now and getting close to DRS zone.
Piastri in the pits as well on the same lap as Perez, so they've swapped it around for this set of pit stops between the McLarens. Piastri getting the first pit stop. I wonder if this is paying him back for being shafted is perhaps a little bit harsh, but getting the short end of the stick on the first round of stops. So he's going to try and do what Norris did to him, vice versa this time round.
Technical term, that, drive shafted. That was a great stop though from Red Bull, wasn't it? 1.9 seconds stationary time. That gained the best part of a second over Oscar Piastri. So Piastri's still in front in that battle, but Perez will be closer to him, that is for sure. They're both on the medium tyres, so Perez has gone hard, medium on his tyres so far. We're on board with Lance Stroll, trying to get himself into the top 10, and about to, because he goes up the inside of Tsunoda and fairly easily through, and that now puts him in the second Aston Martin up to 10th place. But now his teammate Fernando Alonso in 8th place is going to have company on the next lap because George Russell on the medium tyre within a second of him now in the battle for 8th place.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how hard he fights this, because Alonso may want to try and make life as difficult as possible for Russell in that medium compound if they feel they've got a chance to beat him. But Leclerc now being told to box, so the Ferrari behind Sainz. He's going to have a chance now to do an undercut, same as Piastri on Norris. This could be Ferrari offering him a way to get past Sainz.
Yeah, they've got to try something, haven't they? Because they're just stuck at the moment, aren't they? The two Ferraris together, not making any real progress. Smoking the front left tyre then, as we look at the onboard of Charles Leclerc as he hits the pit lane speed limiter, brings the car in. He's going to be onto the hard tyre. That's another slick stop. Well, a slick stop. The first one wasn't, was it? But Ferrari have been pretty good so far today, apart from that one from Leclerc. But 2.2 seconds, decent. And Alonso's come in as well, because he knew he was about to be sucked up by the Mercedes of George Russell. So I think they've reacted to that. Aston Martin comes in and out. It's not brilliant, but 3.3 seconds is not a disaster either.
So taking a new set of hard tyres for Alonso and still managing to come out in front of his teammate Stroll. So that all works out quite nicely for the Aston Martin crew. Norris on the radio now being told to box, so he's been left out for 1 lap extra than they could have possibly. They might have boxed the McLaren of Norris straight away after Piastri, but they chose to leave him out for 1 extra lap. Piastri putting in some really strong sector times now. I'm not sure if it's going to be enough, and big lock-up from Norris as he tries to bring the car down to the pit speed limit there on the entry. I think he just about managed it, but it wasn't pretty. But those tyres are coming off now, so it's no problem.
Yeah, the mechanic's poised and pouncing on the car as soon as it comes in. Right, switch to the medium tyre. So that suggests he's probably going to make another stop, do we think? 25 laps still to go in the race. Maybe. It's touch and go, isn't it? We'll see. But he is well clear of his teammate Piastri, who's only just the start-finish line now as Norris makes his way out of turn 1. Right, next Ferrari in is Carlos Sainz. Comes in on the hard tyre and leaves on another hard tyre as well. So out he goes. So Ferrari trying to react. Good stop from them again. 2.7 seconds. Quickest we've seen today from Red Bull for Perez a couple of minutes ago was 1.9 seconds, which is pretty awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, he's on a tear at the moment and really trying to use those fresh tyres once again. He's going to have to try and make them last. So I do wonder if this is why some people are now starting to consider plan C, D, E, F, because the drivers are really moving quickly. And we're just getting a replay of Alonso getting up on the jacks, and I don't know if the clutch wasn't pulled in, but as the mechanics went to put the... Oh, yeah, that's nasty.
Wheel span, didn't it?
As they went to grab the tyre, the wheel span pretty ferociously. That can end pretty nasty. Luckily, all the mechanics looked like they were okay. No injuries there, and they managed to avoid disaster.
Given that, 3.3 seconds was actually pretty good, wasn't it, for the stop, because it could have been an absolute nightmare of a stop that. Now, new fastest lap of the race has gone to Perez with a 1:22.9. So he is now starting to fly, starting to push, starting to try and catch the McLaren's. Oscar Piastri in 4th place as his first target, and he's not quite close enough yet. He opens the flap and the DRS zone, but I think he's probably going to be a bit too far back when they get to turn 1, even with a late lunge. Maybe turn 2. We've seen Perez do it already in this race, but I don't think he's quite going to be there as they come out of turn 1, run out to the outside of the curbs. Incident involving Charles Leclerc for speeding in the pit lane is being looked at. So great, he's thinking. That's absolutely lovely.
Yeah, sadly for Leclerc, when they investigate you for speeding in pit lane, that is 99.9% of the time a slam dunk penalty, because it's an automatic system. So you can expect a 5-second time penalty to be coming his way. But yeah, this is quite an even fight now, or even-handed fight between Piastri and Perez, because they've both done pit stops recently to a new set of mediums. Perez, of course, still trying to work his way through to that podium, and Piastri is one of the major opponents for him to get there, so this will be a good fight.
We'll pick the pace up, though. Just keep the pace up as high as you can.
This is as fast as it goes, mate. I'm saying.
That's Lewis Hamilton speaking to Pete Bollington, his engineer. It's as quick as it goes, mate. That's all I can do. And you tend to probably believe him, given his record. Lewis Hamilton, 103-time Grand Prix winner. Right, Max Verstappen, remember him? He's 33.2 seconds clear in the lead of the race. He's also looking, with Red Bull, to get the team's 12th consecutive race victory, which would be a record, breaking McLaren's record, which has stood since 1988, 35 years ago. But here comes Perez on the attack. Doesn't go around the outside, Willie, of Oscar Piastri. No way, says the Australian. Still will to will they go, but he does eventually get through on the kink. He's got the inside line for the next turn. He's got the job done. Piastri's weaving around trying to come back on him, but he's on the outside of turn 2. Can he get the inside line for turn 3? Maybe. He goes over the curbs, he tried it, kicks up the dust, goes on the grass, Piastri. You can see exactly what he was thinking there, Jack. If I can just stay on the outside of him, just stay alongside the Red Bull, I might be able to lunge down the inside into the right-hander, but it was a brave effort that didn't quite pay off.
Yeah, it was so close to paying off for Piastri. They had contact already in turn 1, just a light touch side to side, no major damage or harm done. And Perez took the inside line to turn 2 to cover him off. Piastri sent it really hard around the outside on the brakes and nearly got enough of an overlap that Perez would have been obliged to give him the space, but Perez didn't have to do that. He was far enough alongside. We're just getting a replay now as they come into turn 2. Piastri behind him going into the braking zone, but comes alongside under the brakes, rolls some really nice speed through the middle of the corner, almost surprises Perez coming into turn 3, but just can't quite get there.
And Oscar Piastri's teammate, Lando Norris, would have hoped he would have kept the Red Bull behind a little bit longer. Track limits warning for Piastri. I wonder why that was. It's because he went on the grass trying to defend his position as Charles Leclerc is going to get a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Nothing going right for him at the moment, is there? At the fastest lap of the race last time round, hang on.
Oscar, did Perez push you off turn 2? Did you get enough room?
Didn't leave me much space.
So yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's a hard one. I think that I'd be surprised if Perez gets a penalty for that, because it was Piastri's front left to Perez's right rear. So that's not really what you would call getting fully alongside, getting a significant portion of the car there. Perez is usually going to be entitled to take the racing line, which is to go all the way out.
Yeah.
But that's McLaren fishing for a penalty, perhaps. They'll try it. Why not?
Yeah, I think I'm with you though. Perez was well within his rights there, wasn't he, to defend the position. He got the place easily going into the corner, and Piastri was just trying to hang around the outside of him to get the advantage into the next turn. Right, so Norris, a couple of laps ago, fastest lap of the race. He could have done with Piastri keeping the Red Bull of Perez behind him for a bit longer, but he's also got not just one eye on the mirrors and what might be coming in the shape of the Mexican driver, but he's now started to catch Lewis Hamilton for second place, 1.8 seconds behind. A 122.5 for Norris last time around versus a 124.4 for Hamilton. He's much quicker at the moment.
Yeah, those tyres for Hamilton are getting quite long in the tooth now. He's really trying to stretch them to have a good last stint. But we're just getting a replay of why Leclerc got that penalty. Both fronts locking up, smoking into the pit speed control line, and just misjudged it, didn't he? Slightly asked too much of the tyre, and it's a horrible feeling as you're speeding towards that line and there's nothing you can do. We're now getting a replay of Piastri just going wide at turn 4 on the exit curves and getting a track limits warning. It's now being investigated, the turn 2 incident between Perez and Piastri, and they've automatically said no further investigation required, actually.
Yeah, noted, but dismissed as well. So I think that's probably fair enough. Yeah, for all the stick they sometimes get during the strategies.
Use medium. Our tyres are newer than his. We need tyres at the end.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to manage everything. I'm pushing everything.
So that's Lando Norris being told, look after your tyres. Oh no, I'm trying to push and look after the tyres at the same time here. He's sort of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't here. But into the pits now, we've got the Mercedes of Hamilton coming in. So interesting. We've got 50 of the 70 laps complete. What tyre is he going to go for? He's on the hards at the moment. Soft or medium?
He's going to go for the medium, which I think is the right choice. Still got 20 laps of this Grand Prix to go. That's quite a way. No one's really touched the soft since they came off them in the first part of the race. So the hard and the medium, the way to go. It's not a new set, but they look fairly fresh. Probably just done one run somewhere in qualifying or in practice, but he comes out in 5th place behind the McLaren of Piastri.
No, nobody's really fancied those soft tyres, have they? Other than, of course, in the final part of qualifying, because they're softer than the soft tyres from last year, and also because it's so hot, isn't it? I mean, 50 degrees track temperature. These softs aren't going to hold up for too long in those conditions. So Hamilton rejoins in 5th place. You've got Verstappen in the lead on the hard tyre by 35, nearly 36 seconds. Norris, Perez, Piastri and Hamilton 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th, all the mediums, and then the 2 Ferraris, having made their pit stops, are on the hard tyre with Leclerc with this 5-second penalty in 6th place. Sainz is actually just outside of that window because he's 5.5 seconds behind him in 7th, so he needs to keep that gap at more than 5 seconds to keep ahead of his teammate. Russell, still the fastest lap of the race, 8th, Alonso 9th, Stroll in 10th place.
Just looking further down the field, now that we've got everyone pretty much on a 2-stop, and things have sort of equaled out in that sense. Ricciardo has made good progress in that battle between him and his teammate Tsunoda, as we see Verstappen is going to get the call. He is the only one who hasn't done a second pit stop, so he's got that call now. But yeah, Ricciardo in 13th. He's worked his way through a couple of cars, both by strategy and overtaking, which we haven't seen on TV screens, but still Tsunoda down in 16th, struggling, partly thanks to that 5-second penalty he received. The two Haases as well, of Hülkenberg and Magnussen, having a pretty torrid afternoon. Zhao, after his first lap antics, also having a pretty poor afternoon, down in 17th after such a promising Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, a really, really bright Saturday for Alpha, but they're going to be lucky to get anything in terms of points here, aren't they? As the race leader and the championship leader, Max Verstappen, comes into the pit lane to make what should be his final stop of the race now, and with plenty of time in hand here, 21 seconds to come in and out. He's got more than 35 seconds advantage, and he too goes to the medium tyre at a really good stop from Red Bull, 2.6 seconds for him. So now trundling down the pit lane, about to come out. At an aerial shot of the grandstands as well. It's absolutely packed to the Hungaroring. They reckon the attendance for the weekend is 330,000. This place, when it was opened back in 1986, had a record attendance of 200,000, which stood as a record for a decade, and the whole track was built in just 9 months. Pretty impressive. So Verstappen back out. He's just made sure he got at the inside of the Williams of Logan Sargent to not get delayed for the rest of the lap, and that was all smooth running for him. So it looks good now for a race win, doesn't he?
Yep, and the Hungaroring's always got a good atmosphere to it. Raced there many times myself, and I don't know if it's the good weather that attracts people along, but it always seems to have a nice atmosphere, lots of people. The paddock's fairly nice and open, and the racing, although it's more of a chess game with the strategy being the key here rather than on-track overtakes, it does make for an intriguing race. So we're now on board with Bottas, who's closing up onto the rear of Albon. This is in the fight really for a last point, and Stroll not too far ahead of them, who's pace is not the same as his teammate Alonso ahead, so they're well in with a shout here. Bottas trying to stay close to the inside in the last corner, stay inside of the Williams and that dirty air, get a good launch off. He's not too far back. With DRS, he could have a go here.
Yeah, absolutely right. So they go thundering over the start-finish line. A little crest there. The flap closes. As looking at the inside here is Bottas. The door closes. Almost goes into the back of the Williams of Albon on the way through at turn 1. Albon stays in 11th place. Actually pulls a gap on the run downhill into the left-hander at turn 2, which means he's going to cover off that position for now. Trouble is for Bottas, even if he gets past the Williams, he's then got to find 13 seconds to catch the first of the Aston Martins he'll come up to get into the points.
So, meanwhile, a bit ahead of them, Charles Leclerc is proving himself right to the Ferrari team. He's been pulling away from Sainz ever since they came out of their pit stops. He's now 6 seconds ahead, so he's not got to worry about that penalty. Meanwhile, he spent 16 laps stuck behind his teammate, but he's only 5 seconds behind Hamilton, who's only 5 seconds behind Piastri, and both of them are closing on Piastri, who appears to be struggling for pace. So he was absolutely right. Ferrari have definitely compromised Leclerc's race and their own potential for more points by not letting Leclerc pass Sainz straight away after that pit stop.
So you see why he was getting frustrated on the radio with that. No, you're absolutely right. He's on a march now, on the hard tyre or not. And where would he have been if he hadn't spent so long being held up potentially behind his teammate? Right, the Albon-Bottas battle about to resume. Is he going to get through this time? Well, Alex is fighting hard, even if he's not in the points here, isn't he? He's going to make life difficult.
Yeah, and he's not quite close enough, Bottas, into turn 1, so he's just closed him down with the DRS, and he looks like he won't be close enough into turn 2 as well. He just runs up to the back of the Williams, but not close enough to have a go. It's the most frustrating thing when you're the driver behind and the pace difference is not quite big enough. You keep catching and catching, not close enough. Now you've got to wait for 3/4 of a lap again, sitting in that dirty air, overheating your tyres, working harder than the driver in front of you just to stay close. It's going to be killing Bottas in that Alfa Romeo.
And you'll never guess who's just got the fastest lap of the race. That's right, Max Verstappen, the race leader, greedy boy. He's got 25 points already. He wants another one for the fastest lap. It's 13.8 seconds clear now. He's just done a 1 minute 20.504. Pretty phenomenal.
keep an eye on Sergio Perez. He's in 3rd place. He's driven really well to get up there from 9th on the grid. He's 7.4 seconds behind Lando Norris, but he's lapping a second a lap faster than him at the moment, so it's not going to be too long before there's a battle for 2nd place between those two cars.
No, you're absolutely right. Personal best lap for the Mexican last time around, 122.295. And we've got to watch for Piastri being caught by Hamilton, haven't we? Because that gap is starting to come down now that Hamilton has got the better tyre on, and he's free to go on the attack here, Jack.
He is, yeah. I'm just agreeing with Andrew, the pace of the Red Bulls today looks phenomenal. I mean, that lap from Verstappen, which I dare say he may yet try and improve that effort later in the race when the point for fastest lap is up for grabs. It's already a nuclear pace that he's got. He's seconds ahead of the field, and that's why Perez is able to move his way up the field so effectively as well. He's driving a really strong race, but Red Bull look just imperious.
Right, top 3 have gone through over the line. 123.9 for Verstappen, 123.2 for Norris, 122.4 for Perez. So 6.6 seconds now the difference between McLaren in 2nd and the Red Bull in 3rd place. 8.6 seconds adrift of Norris's Piastri in 4th place, but he's now less than 3 seconds clear of Hamilton, who's just done a personal best lap of the race, and he's the quickest driver on track at the moment on this lap with a 121.6. So that'll be hammer time then.
Yep, it's a pretty good lap there from Hamilton as well. So the Mercedes clearly still in a good window after qualifying. They were sounding a bit doubtful of their race pace, but not bad. Here's Verstappen.
There are so many marvels in the Turn 1 offline, it's crazy. It takes like a whole lap to get them off.
Understood, Max.
Yeah, there aren't there? And of course, you know, he's leading the race, but he's still got a lap cars, and that's where you're traditionally going to do it around here, the end of the first DRS zone, down the inside.
Got to give him something to complain about or to worry about, or to add a bit of jeopardy into his race.
Yeah, it's absolutely right though. Those very noticeable here, and I guess it's because of the extremely hot temperatures. Right, Alex Albon doing a fine job here of keeping Valtteri Bottas behind him in still a very close battle for 11th place. They've just gone through turns 1 and 2. The Williams still ahead, and this must be hugely demoralising here for Bottas. He can't quite get close enough coming out of the last turn.
Yeah, he's now spent the best part of 5 laps doing the same thing into turn 1, closing up just behind him. Here's Norris.
Got to Perez, 6.6.
Yeah, I'm pushing, mate.
Get off my case. What do you think I'm doing, he says.
Yeah, I mean, the engineer's just trying to be helpful. Some drivers do like specific time gaps. Lando's probably thinking, I can see him in the mirrors, you don't have to tell me. So he's really pushing now to try and keep that gap up, because he knows with the straight line speed of that Red Bull, if he gets within striking range, it's going to be difficult for him. But yeah, just on the Bottas-Albon battle, for Bottas, he's been there for 5 laps now and getting to within millimetres of him into turn 1 every time, it seems.
And of course, the longer that Alex Albon holds up Valtteri Bottas, actually wheels in Daniel Ricciardo, who's done well to pull himself back into the race. He was right at the bottom of the pack. Now he's P13 on that medium tyre, and actually his best lap just a few moments ago was quicker than Valtteri and Alex's. So interesting to see if he can bring himself into that fight as well. He's currently ahead of his teammate Yuki Tsunoda, who's back down in P16. He
is, but Tsunoda also just did his personal best lap of the race, which was about half a tenth quicker than Ricciardo. So, you know, he's doing okay, isn't he? He's not exactly being trounced by Ricciardo, is he?
No, but you know, it's a good recovery. I mean, more for Ricciardo than for Tsunoda, who's still working his way back after his first lap issues and getting delayed here and there, the penalty that he had. But yep, not bad. We're now looking at the battle between Hamilton and Piastri. Hamilton's closed right up onto the back of him through this lap, and he now has DRS. He's closing hard into turn 1. Piastri thinks about if anybody doesn't in the end, and leaves the door open for Hamilton, who sweeps up the inside and takes that very happily.
Yeah, I think if Piastri had seen that coming or not, Hamilton was going. You could see from the body language of the car, right, going for this. First time of asking, dive down the inside into turn 1, and that puts Hamilton up to 4th place now. And what has he got to try and catch now to the Red Bull of Perez? He's going to have around about 10 seconds to try and catch in the last 13 laps or so of the race.
Yeah, we're just getting an onboard replay now of Hamilton, who has massive speed advantage coming into turn 1, and Piastri clearly just felt it wasn't worth fighting. So slightly demoralising for the Aussie, who had such a promising start, but yeah, now starting to struggle for pace, it looks like, compared to the top 3 or 4.
So Verstappen goes through 122.4. Norris last time rounded a 122.9, which was 0.6 quicker than Perez. So he's looking good for a consecutive second place finish here, is Lando Norris.
Just on the McLarens, obviously, as we said, Piastri perhaps was a little bit frustrated, but it's still a great day for him and for Norris. And their closest rivals in the Constructors' Championship are, of course, Alpine, with both cars currently sat on the sidelines. So Alpine are going to be watching this with their head in their hands. It's the last thing that they need.
And 9th and 10th for the Aston Martin, so the sort of slight downturn in performance continues. We had a theory overnight from Alonso that since Pirelli introduced a new structured tyre, which was due to come in next year but came in early at Silverstone, he reckoned the Aston Martins and the Red Bulls hadn't quite been on it since then. But, you know, the gaps in terms of qualifying between himself and the pole sitter, which is generally or always a Red Bull, have been pretty similar. He's been about 4/10 down in qualifying. It's just that other teams like McLaren and Mercedes as well have filled that gap between the Aston Martin and the Red Bulls now.
Yeah, it shows how strong the pace of development has been for the midfield battle. It's been quite incredible with the the swings and turns this year in form for those midfield teams. It seems like we have different strengths and weaknesses at every circuit that we go to, so the Aston has fallen back a little bit. They're still very much in the fight, and they'll be hoping that they can come back yet for the end of this season, but yeah, they're going through a little bit of a fallow patch at the moment.
So Max Verstappen's only real issues to deal with are going through the traffic at the moment, aren't they? And that's it really. So he's got past the Alpha of Joe and Bottas, and now Williams to deal with coming up shortly, but he's got 15 seconds in hand already. Norris though, 4.9 seconds the gap between him and Perez. So for the first time in a couple of laps, the Red Bull really did take quite a big chunk of time out of the second place McLaren on that last lap.
Yep. Going further back, that battle between Albon and Bottas, it is still exactly the same. Poor Bottas still within tenths of Albon, but not being able to get past, and he's going to have to try something different, or perhaps the pit wall for Alfa Romeo will have to try something different with this last 10 or 11 laps coming through now.
And Perez was 4/10 quicker through the first sector. It's just at a personal best first sector. We're looking at a pretty focused Christian Horner, the team principal of the Oracle Red Bull Racing team, on the pit wall. He knows he's got the win in the bag. Is he going to get a 1-2 here? And remember as well, it's going to be the 250th podium for Red Bull Racing if they get on the podium. Could have number 251 as well by the looks of it.
If they get on the podium?
It's motorsport, you just never quite know. Never trust motorsport.
Absolutely. It's not over till the checker flag drops. But yeah, it does look to be a battle between Norris and Perez for those final positions. Here's Norris now on the radio.
They have to get out of the way. He's had so many blue flags. He's not racing for racing.
Getting a tad frustrated there with the traffic, wasn't he? And 20p in the swear box as well from Lando Norris by the sounds of it. He's on a charge here to try, well, not on a charge to catch, but a charge to try and defend position here. But absolutely right, he was getting a little bit held up there by the AlphaTauri of Tsunoda, wasn't he?
Yeah, it's a really frustrating thing, especially around a track like this, where because there are fewer straights, it is harder for the lap traffic to get out of the way, but it is still their obligation, and the effect of sitting in front of a race leader is much worse with the dirty air effect. So Norris, who's already clearly feeling a bit stressed about Perez closing in on him in these last 10 laps, he's losing his temper a little bit with those guys who are not getting out of the way. And as he said, they aren't racing for points, so it really is up to them to make sure they don't influence the race leader's battle too much.
For any Lewis Hamilton fans listening, they might be cheered by the fact that in 2019, with 12 laps to go, on lap 60 actually, Lewis Hamilton had a 12-second disadvantage to Max Verstappen, who was in the lead of the race back then. It was Max Verstappen's tyres that went off, and so Lewis took the lead. He's got a just within 12-second gap of Sergio Perez now, so who knows, maybe history will repeat itself and a Red Bull will lose its tyres and Hamilton will get back onto a podium spot. But, you know, here we go. We live in hope here if you're a Lewis Hamilton fan.
That's a specific stat. I love it. It's brilliant. We're living in hope, as you say.
So we've had 60 of the 70 laps complete. Max Verstappen leads by 19 seconds. He's got the fastest lap of the race as well to boot. So 26 points coming his way to extend his championship lead, with Lando Norris in second place, but trying to fend off the ever-closing attentions of Sergio Perez. He's only 3.2 seconds behind him now in the next Red Bull in third place. Hamilton is 11 seconds further back in fourth.
Everything okay? Just checking in.
Yeah, all good.
Are you all right, Max? Yeah, absolutely fine. Having a lovely drive.
Have you had a drink? Staying hydrated?
It's all very laid back, isn't it? Which shows just how much in control he is, but how much in control of the race they are. So Piastri is 6 seconds behind Hamilton. He's in 5th place. 6th is Leclerc, still just over 5 seconds behind, but still more than 5 seconds clear of his teammate Sainz with the 5-second penalty. So 6th and 7th for 2 Ferraris. Russell in 8th place. 9th Alonso and 10th Stroll. 11th Albon, 12th Bottas, still stuck behind the Williams. Ricciardo in 13th on his return to Formula 1 racing, former winner of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Hülkenberg is 14th, Sargent 15th, and Tsunoda 16th, ahead of Zhou and Magnussen, who are 17th and 18th.
Just looking at this battle between Norris and Perez, Perez has had a little bit of traffic affecting him as well, so the gap's actually gone out for the first time in a while now. It's hovering around 3.5 seconds, and he probably will keep closing on him if he does get close enough to start fighting. I think we were just seeing from Rosano that the lap times of Hamilton still very impressive, so actually we were joking, but he could close in on this battle pretty quickly.
2019 all over again, I tell you.
Do you
say something about this race that I've been looking into the articles?
Do you reckon, though, that even if he made a good start, he's got the pace to win this race, that Mercedes? I mean, podium for sure, but would he have been able to fend off the Red Bull?
No. I don't want to. I think we don't have to live in hope because the race is ongoing, but as much as we all wanted to believe on Saturday night that he could, the pace of those Red Bulls is just so impressive today.
He is the closest to Max Verstappen on that last lap. Verstappen was a 121.693 and Lewis was a 122.1. The 2 cars in front are in the 123s, so he has got some pace. He'll be cheered by that, I'm sure, but having lost the lead off the start, I can imagine he's spent most of this race feeling fairly frustrated.
Yeah, we've heard how relaxed Verstappen is. I mean, he's cruising at the front there. I'm mildly interested to see if he's going to try and go for another fastest lap just for the sport of it. But when he put in that lap early on in his stint, still with a decent amount of fuel, I mean, that was very, very impressive. So it shows what they have the capability of.
Yeah, absolutely right. And for George Russell, not a bad effort from 18th on the grid, 8th place. It doesn't look like he's going to catch the Ferraris. He's still just under 2 seconds adrift. They're on a very similar pace. But I would say from where he was around this track, getting into the points, he's not too bad. Yeah,
absolutely. And he is closing slowly on Sainz. We've been watching that as well. And he's about 1.5 seconds off, so he will start to suffer from that dirty air soon. But he could get into DRS before the end of this Grand Prix, and you never know, might be able to pull something off if he pressures Sainz into a mistake.
Seriously, like to consider boxing, it's dropping big time.
Yeah, we're guaranteed to lose position if we do that.
Interesting. So that's George Russell saying, well, I'm thinking about going into the pits, I'm really struggling. But as you say, he's just took 3/10 out of the Ferrari on that lap.
Yeah, I wonder how delayed that radio message would be. I mean, it'd be pretty much suicidal to do an extra pit stop with 6 laps to go, even if your tyres were off the cliff. And as you say, I don't think they're as bad as the people around him. So that might be slightly delayed from a handful of laps ago. Even so, his engineer overruling him there, saying, no, sorry, mate, you're going to have to deal with it.
We're seeing some very happy in the grandstands of all ages Max Verstappen fans here. Hot, they've got the towels and the scarves over the back of their caps to try and keep their necks from being sunburnt. It's a very hot day to be watching motorsport, but they've had a great day here. But are they going to get a 1-2? Because even though he's a couple of tenths quicker on the previous lap, the gap keeps yo-yoing, doesn't it, between Norris and Perez? And actually, on that last lap, it grew a little bit. So Norris is doing a really good job here to keep focused, keep concentrated, and make sure he gets that McLaren home in 2nd place.
Yeah, it looks like Perez has lost a bit of pace now in the last 5 laps. So they are coming through a fairly heavy patch of traffic, both of them now. They're both suffering from that. Sometimes for the lead car, it can be a bit easier because you're the first one to sort of be given the priority. But yeah, that battle is waning. Meanwhile, look at this.
This is George Russell suddenly much, much closer to the tail of Carlos Sainz. So you're right, getting just into that DRS zone, then towed him along, didn't it, at the start of the lap. So through the first couple of corners, he's almost underneath the rear wing of the Ferrari in the battle for 7th place. We're on board with George Russell now. Good call not to come into the pits because he would have had no chance with so few laps remaining. So game on all of a sudden here for another position for George Russell. We've seen him a couple of times in this race looking pretty feisty already, so I think if he gets half a chance, he's going to take it, isn't he?
Maybe some mind games with that radio call, just to get into the head of Carlos. Who knows? These things usually don't get transmitted to the driver, but it did seem an odd thing to say over the radio. But his pace is really impressive, and he was sort of creeping up and tense before, but now he's just jumped on Carlos and tried to surprise him a little bit. He's coming into the last corner now, goes wide, tries to get out of the dirty air, and he's going to try and come back for a late apex wiggle from Carlos. He's got a great exit. He's right on the back of the Ferrari.
Yeah, and the Ferrari really struggling for traction coming out of the last turn. Around the outside goes George Russell. He's going to get the job done before they even get to the turning point. And Russell from 18th on the grid rises all the way up to 7th place now. Remember, on the medium tyre as well, Sykes on the hard tyre, but Sykes really looked like he was struggling with the back of the car. They just couldn't get the power down, could he?
No, the tyre difference was really apparent to see there. So George was playing that quite smart, I think. He sort of just got towards the back of the Ferrari before he hit the dirty air, and then when he needed to get through that nasty patch of about a second and a half, he really turned it on and made the difference between the two apparent, and that move in the end was really easy. Here's his radio.
Yeah, baby.
Oh, he's cheered up a bit now, George Russell. And also, remember, 5-second penalty for Leclerc, so he could get another Ferrari here, even if he doesn't get past him. And then that's 6th place from 18th on the grid. That's a really good turnaround.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to watch his lap times. He's got 3 or 4 laps to do this, but he's about 0.8 of a second outside of that 5-second penalty for Leclerc, so he's well within reach. He was catching both of them earlier, so I think he'll do it, you know.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. He has got his tail up now, hasn't he, George Russell? A fine fight back here. On pole position here last year. He's had to come from near the back of the grid this time. I mean, as a team misjudged the traffic situation really in the first part of qualifying. They probably didn't need to. He was saying overnight we could have we had pace enough in the car not to leave it to the last minute to get out of Q1, but live and learn. But it has been a very positive drive, this, from George Russell. So he's gunning after the Ferrari. If he can get to within 5 seconds of Charles Leclerc, even if he doesn't pass him, he'll get promoted up to 6th place, and he'll know that as well, won't he? So once he does that, he'll probably then just try and manage the car. We're into the last few laps of the race now. Verstappen leads by 26 seconds. How did that happen? He's just flying away. Norris is second. Perez has fallen away, nearly 5 seconds behind now in 3rd place.
Yeah, Perez is really dropping off now, so it looks like he was pushing too hard to try and grab that 2nd spot on the podium, and he's now actually put himself more under threat from losing his 3rd spot to Hamilton, who is motoring up to the back of him. 3.5 seconds to gap now. He's gained more than a second a lap in the last 5 laps. 3 laps to go. He will be on the back of Perez by the time they get to the checkered flag if it carries on at this rate.
Yeah, interesting that, isn't it? How it's suddenly switched around from going on the attack to maybe having to go on the defence here. I'm looking at the Williams flashing past the camera of Logan Sargent, who started dead last. He's up to 15th place. Tsunoda is 0.6 of a second behind him, and the Americans on the hard tyre, the Japanese drivers on the medium tyre, and so there could be a change here, albeit only for 15th position. Just in front of them is the first of the Hasses of Nico Hülkenberg in 14th place, also on the hard tyre. So it shows, doesn't it, even in the middle of the pack here, it's still very much bunched up here. There's not too much between these midfield teams.
No, everyone's suffering from that difficulty of overtaking around this track, so little trains are forming everywhere. But Russell, further into the points, has managed to get within that 5-second gap of Leclerc. He's actually half a second safe at the moment, so looking like he's going to do that pretty easily. So solid race from him. But yeah, Hamilton now down to 2.6 seconds behind Perez, so he's catching him pretty quickly now. It will be within DRS on the last lap, of course. Catching and overtaking, 2 very different things.
But caution will be thrown to the wind, because if you start on pole position, there's only one thing you ever really are going to be satisfied with. That's a race win. But 4th place is just not going to take that, is he? So half a chance. Hamilton's going to go for it here. He's pushing on, and he gets the gap down to 2.3 seconds now in his pursuit of the Mexican, including this one. We've only got 3 laps to go, though, so he's going to have to get on with it, Jack.
Yeah, but he is. He's doing a good job, and we'll keep an eye on that still. It's really the last intense battle we've got here. Bottas, the poor soul, is still mired behind the Williams of Albon for 11th and 12th place, but he's not making any headway there. And as we mentioned earlier, this battle for 14th, not of much consequence, even if it is quite tight. So Hamilton, Perez, the real attention grabber here in the final laps of this race.
Yeah, absolutely right. So 2.4 seconds, middle of the lap. Perez has been able to fend him off. It's hovering at 2.3, 2.4 seconds. If you, as you say, just get to within a second, though, that will really make a huge difference as he gets the DRS at the start of the lap, on the run down the start finish straight to turn 1, on the run out of turn 1 down to turn 2. So Verstappen nearly 30 seconds clear. Looks like he's going to get this record and break history with a 12th win on the bounce, going back to the last race of last year for Red Bull. And he's also on course to pick up his 9th race victory of the season to further extend his championship lead over Sergio Perez, who may or may not get 3rd place here at best. So here we go, Hamilton pushing on, and there it comes down again, the gap through the next split to 1.8 seconds now. So he's almost there, Jack.
Yeah, and he's going to have one more chance to do this. They're on the penultimate lap now. They'll pass start finish once more, which is the only overtaking spot, really. Just going on board, there was a brief yellow flag in sector 2, and we're seeing it is Logan Sargent just having a spin in turns 6 and 7, the middle chicane of the lap, and that was completely by himself. So a little bit of a lapse of concentration as we get towards the end of this hot Grand Prix. Yeah,
and in fairness, Yuki Tsunoda did well to avoid him. He was right behind him, wasn't he? We saw him flash past from the onboard perspective of the Williams, and then saw the exterior picture, and it was pretty tight. So the Williams now makes its way into the pits. The other Williams is, in terms of positions of Alex Albon, only just outside of the points, but realistically a long way from being in the top 10, because he's more than 15 seconds behind the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll.
So through the first sector of this penultimate lap, which is effectively, you can consider it the last lap for Hamilton, because he needs to get on the back of Perez going into the first sector of the last lap. He's still 1.6 seconds behind, so Perez has managed to keep that gap fairly stable here and potentially saved himself from a last lap battle. He's pulled it out a little bit there.
Yeah, last lap of the race, lap 70 of 70, 1.7 seconds. Looks like it's going to be too much now for even Lewis Hamilton to try and track back, and George Russell within a second of Charles Leclerc. He doesn't actually need to pass him because of the 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane for the Ferrari driver. So 6th place it's going to be, and I suppose if he gets half a chance he might go for it, but he doesn't need to risk it. So Verstappen exactly 33 seconds clear in the lead of the race for the champion, just bringing it home now. Norris with a fine drive there in 2nd place has been helped really by the fact that Perez has struggled towards the end of the race and has had to think more about Hamilton behind him. But Max Verstappen is almost home and dry in the Hungarian Grand Prix. He is about to make history because he comes out of the final corner, and it is a record-breaking 12th win on the trot for Red Bull Racing. They break a 35-year-old record once held by McLaren, and it's a 9th win of the season for Max Verstappen here at the Hungaroring. Here comes Lando Norris, 2nd place for the 2nd race weekend running it is going to be, from 3rd on the grid. So he's just got to bring it home now through the final sector. And what about the Perez-Hamilton battle? It's still close, 1.4 seconds, but realistically, the Mexican driver should be able to hang on to this. Here, out of the final corner then, comes Lando Norris, goes over the line and takes the checkered flag, 2nd place, and another podium, his 3rd of the season. Through then comes Sergio Perez from 9th on the grid to 3rd, and that's podium number 250 and 251 for Red Bull Racing. And from pole position, Lewis Hamilton will be, I dare say, a little bit downbeat about coming home in 4th place. Oscar Piastri is in 5th position at the moment. He should stay 5th as he gets towards the checkered flag. We've got the onboard from George Russell. He's behind Leclerc's Ferrari, but the Ferrari's got a 5-second penalty. So from 18th on the grid, it should become 6th place for George Russell. So a good day for him. Not such a good day, though, Jack Aitken, for Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, they'll be disappointed. They clearly had pace, the two Mercedes. Perhaps a race win would have been difficult, so strong were the Red Bulls again today, and especially Verstappen in that winning car. But the podium was definitely on, had a better first lap.
Yeah, absolutely right. So it really needed a lively start, didn't it, from Lewis Hamilton. Here's the radio.
Not a bad race car, is it? Controlled that beautifully. Congrats.
Well done, mate. That is win 44 for you, 12 in a row, and that is history. That is absolute history today. That's a fantastic, fantastic performance.
What an unbelievable rocket ship that was today. That was so enjoyable to drive. Unbelievable. Well done, guys. 12 in a row. Unbelievable. I think everyone can be really proud of that achievement with today. That was unbelievable. Thank you. Hey, this is so enjoyable to drive. Unbelievable. I was really enjoying that last stint.
So team radio from your race when you heard from Christian Horner as well. He's always got a stat ready, hasn't he, at the end of the race? Here's Lando Norris's radio.
Go! Yeah, baby!
I think he's happy, Jack. Lando Norris.
No stats on his radio there, but he seemed pretty happy. Yeah, and he should be. He drove a really good race there, worked really hard to hold off Perez in the final stint, and managed to even pull out the gap to what is a faster car. So really good job from Lando.
Yeah, and for McLaren, we knew about the improvement in Austria, we knew about the big improvement at Silverstone, but there was a question mark as to whether it would be as much of an improvement on this very different circuit. But it's proved to be very impressive indeed, hasn't it? A second and a fifth place finish.
Yeah, I wonder if they were really, truly not expecting that increase in performance. Sometimes a package can surprise you. You don't get all of the information that you need from the modelling and the wind tunnel. You have to see how it's going to perform when the rubber hits the track. And for them, it's all been positive.
So back into Parc Fermé and just putting the steering wheel back in. Max Verstappen, his dark blue race suit, largely white helmet, gets on top of the car, punches the air, clenches his fist. The crowd roar. Now he runs over to the team and jumps into the arms of them. Having made history with the team, he got the fastest lap of the race, he got the race win, just about the perfect day, and despite struggling a bit with the car on Saturday, he said actually it was lovely to drive today, and that was just about as straightforward as it gets. At least Max Verstappen, who now goes over to Dad Jos, who definitely has a smile on his face. He hasn't had it all weekend long, but he's got one now, hasn't he? Congratulates his son on his 44th career victory in Formula 1 already.
Just to put that into perspective, his fastest lap, 1.1 seconds a lap faster than Hamilton and the Mercedes, who I believe was next best. And as we were saying, the Mercedes was working quite well this weekend. They're still over a second down on the fastest lap, which shows how strong they were today.
Yeah, so they're closing the gap in terms of qualifying, but the race pace, certainly in these conditions on this circuit, is still mighty impressive, isn't it? They've broken this long-standing record of 12 wins on the trot. It could well be 12 wins on the trot this season next time out in just a week's time when we go to Belgium, couldn't it, if he keeps this up? And of course he's going to have a very large chunk of the crowd behind him there. It's Belgium, but of course all Dutch fans will be there. He's lots of fans in Belgium as well, hasn't he?
It's a second home race for him, such as the proximity there and the history for his family in Belgium as well. They spent a lot of time in his childhood racing there, and I believe his mother is from there as well. But it's going to be a lovely sight for him to go into the gates with the Orange Army in full force. We're just seeing further celebrations from the Red Bull mechanics. They really enjoyed that one, clearly.
Yeah, you could tell how focused from his reaction on the radio Lando Norris was. Lando Norris sounded a bit stressed at points there, wasn't he? But he had to dig deeper. You get the impression he was going flat out there to make sure he got second place. And we saw in the background Sergio Perez with a smile on his face, because he's done a good job there. He's had a lot of stick lately, but I know he's in a great car. But from ninth on the grid, that was a good effort.
He has. That'll go some way to undoing some of the damage for him in recent times.
Yeah, well, very shortly we'll get to hear from the drivers. Former world champion Nico Rosberg, he's going to be speaking to our top three drivers.
Checo, what a phenomenal recovery that was, and what a pace you had there. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, we got close to P2. Unfortunately, we got through a lot of black markers, so the track was unbelievable dirty offline. So in the last laps, I had some pickup going through the black markers, and then, that meant that I lost a few seconds, and then I recovered towards the end, but it was just too late. But anyway, I think overall it was a great strategy by the team, and we managed to have an excellent result.
Christian Horner was saying that it's so important for you now to rebuild your confidence. Is a day like this today exactly what you need for that?
Yeah, definitely. I think this sort of performance, sort of days do help, and from now on, I just look forward to, basically be on the podium every single weekend, So, let's keep it up.
I think we're just seeing that pass you had with Piastri. Take us through that. Was that like really, really on the edge there?
Yeah, he was, because we were on very similar age tire. Basically, we pitted at the same lap, so we were on fresh tires. So I went for it around the outside. we touched into turn 1 and then into turn 2 we touched again. So it was a little bit close, but hard racing, I'll say.
Okay, congratulations for such a great job today.
Thank you.
Lando, P2 again, and what an incredible pace that was in the race today.
Thanks, thank you.
You have a lot of fans here, huh? The grandstands are going crazy.
I know. No, I got good fans, thank you very much. Just, tough race. Not an easy one, especially with Checo catching at the end, but he didn't have enough pace to catch up, so I'm happy. I had to fight for a little bit in the beginning. I got a bit screwed over in turn 1, but another podium for us and for McLaren, which is amazing.
And it's the second podium for you, like in succession. That's the first time you've had successive podiums. So is the win coming next now, or what?
If Max retires or something, then maybe. But at the minute, the guys are too quick, unless they make mistakes or something happens. But at the minute, I think we're very happy with the progress we made to go from where we were, 4 or 5 races ago, struggling to get out of Q1 sometimes, to fighting for poles and fighting for podiums. We'll take it for now, and our time will come later on in the year.
What do you put it down to? Like, how have you managed to make such an incredibly massive jump forward in terms of pace, like mid-season now? I mean, with that upgrade, what was happening there? It's amazing.
Just the obvious answer. A lot of hard work, great teamwork. Everyone back in the factory did an amazing job. I think we knew it in the beginning. We were going to struggle, and we looked pretty poor. We got a lot of abuse from McLaren and saying they weren't doing a good enough job. But I'm happy we finally proved some people wrong.
Thank you very much. Awesome job you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Max, congratulations, yet another win. Take us through that start from the dirty side. That was incredible.
Yeah, finally we had a really good start. So very happy with that. We've been working on that quite a bit to try and really get the good bite. Then I knew, of course, when I had the inside that that corner was mine. So
we can see it here, close, and you run Lewis out a little bit wide, right, just to make sure that you hold position.
Yeah, it was just late on the brakes. You are a heavy car, so luckily it all worked out well. And basically from there onwards I could do my race. And today the car was really, really quick.
Yeah, you've been complaining about the car balance, just slippery, sliding all the time. You said all weekend, but today you're happy.
Yeah, I think over one lap this weekend it was a bit of a struggle, but maybe it was probably a good thing for today. So yeah, the car was good on any tire. We could look after the tire wear, and basically that's why we could create such a big gap.
I have to take you through the statistics. I mean, it's 12 wins in a row now for Red Bull, beating a historic record from McLaren. And also you, 7 wins in a row. You're nearing the historic record from Sebastian Vettel, 9 wins. I got 7, so we equalize on that.
Yeah, exactly, that's good.
So stop here, please. But do you care about the statistics?
I mean, for the team, 12 wins in a row, it's just incredible. What we've been going through the last 2 years is unbelievable, and hopefully, we can keep this momentum going for a long time. And also, just to work with the whole team is always very enjoyable. Of course, it's always good to look into, like yesterday, for example, to keep pushing, always wanting to do better. But then a day like today is just perfect.
I can judge it very well, and you're doing the most incredible job. So congratulations, and
thank you.
Enjoy watching that level.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Sergio Perez, the top 3 we heard from there. Lewis Hamilton was 4th, Oscar Piastri 5th, George Russell 6th with the penalty, Charles Leclerc drops to 7th, Sainz in 8th, Alonso 9th and Stroll 10th. In terms of the Drivers' Championship now, Max Verstappen at 110 points clear in the lead of the championship with 281 over Perez on 171, Alonso 3rd on 139 points. Despite starting from near the back, George Russell has moved up to 5th in the championship, Lando Norris has moved up to 8th, Red Bull lead the constructors on 452 points, Mercedes second on 223, and we had McLaren move up to 5th place in the championship now ahead of Alpine, who didn't score any points today. So final thoughts, Jack Aitken, as we are into the halfway stage of the season now. The Red Bull Max Verstappen juggernaut marches on, but next weekend Spa, and the weather sometimes plays a part there. In fact, it always does, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that'll provide opportunities for those trying to chase him, because at the moment, in normal conditions, he's just unbeatable. It's quite impressive what they're doing. After the setbacks they had during qualifying and struggling with the balance of that car, they've come back swinging on Sunday when it really matters.
So thanks very much to Jack Aitken, to Andrew Benson, Rosanna Tennant, and from me, Chris Hartley. Thanks for listening. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. You can catch up with all of the reaction to the Hungarian Grand Prix on the Checkered Flag podcast. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.